Hi, everybody. We're the Skeleton Crew, and today we are going to be talking about a Tyrannosaur that I like very much, named Albertosaurus. We'll get into the story of how it got its name a little bit later. But before we release the animal from the hatchery and show you the glory of this beautiful, elegantly designed theropod dinosaur, a couple things. One, I'm Dr. James Napoli. I'm a postdoctoral researcher at the North Carolina Museum of Natural Sciences and North Carolina State University. Two,
my name is Scott Johnston. I'm the vertebrate paleontology fossil preparator and technician at Harvard University's Museum of Comparative Zoology.
Three,
I'm Alex Rubenstahl, a PhD candidate at Yale University.
and four, not five.
I'm Dalton Meyer. I'm also a PhD candidate at Yale University. And together,
We're
the Skeleton Crew.
Most of it, yes. Amelia's not here. Amelia's on a research trip right now. She doesn't have enough internet connection to join the recording. We did try. We had a failed recording session earlier this week. We just couldn't handle all of the information it needed to transmit. So, unfortunately, she's not able to be a part of us for this episode. What?
Yeah, sure, that's why it failed.
Yeah, that's why it failed. It certainly wasn't.
The vibes were off.
The vibes were off. Certainly there wasn't a lost bit that led to about 6 minutes of laughter and nobody being able to speak coherently for several minutes.
Hey, you know what? Random viewer who's watching this video right now, you. Yeah, you. If you want to see this lost bit, you should consider joining our Patreon.
You should.
Yes. Money.
Yes, pay us money and we'll show you a video of us all embarrassing ourselves. And by us all, I mean me thinking I had made an incredibly clever, funny bit that made absolutely no sense.
To be clear,
grossly
it was
confused
incredibly funny.
Oh,
it was very funny.
It was funny. It was not witty. It was not, witty was the wrong word for it. But it was
swing and
stupid.
a miss in the most epic of contexts.
I had a wonderful time, and we had to stop recording because we simply could not recover from that derailment.
And
it was
viewer,
beautiful.
you've seen us go on some hella derailments in the past. Do you have any idea how incredible this must have been to derail an entire recording session to the point where it needed to be scrapped?
Listen, we know that there are thousands of you who watch these videos every week, and we know that there are...
And we thank you.
We thank you all. We know there are also about 70 of you who subscribe to our Patreon, and let me tell you, if you've been watching these videos every week, you're going to want to see this clip at least.
So funny.
It's pretty good. One thing that I think we should also mention that we've forgotten to talk about for weeks and weeks and weeks now is that we also have a Redbubble page where you can buy Skeleton Crew merch. And I just remembered this when I had to write the description for a video that's currently queued to go up, and I was like, oh yeah, the Redbubble. So if you want Skeleton Crew merch, you can go there. We have a lot of versions of our logo. We've got some skull silhouettes, all different kinds of products. And I think I'm going to sneak in and re-enable the mini skirt. I think it's time. I think
Boys
it's time.
Night.
Right, Boys Night. We're re-enabling the mini skirt on Redbubble.
Get me one of them.
Do I do it now? No, it'll derail the video too much. But anyway, if I've done my job, you'll be able to purchase a Skeleton Crew mini skirt. And it looks terrible. It's just the worst piece of clothing I can imagine.
I've tried to have bad fabric.
It's so good.
There's going to be one person that buys it.
Oh, I think
it's going to be me, of the United States, who's going to fondly remember when those were in fashion in his youth.
I was wearing a Skeleton Crew miniskirt, which was the style at the time.
Do you have any idea how much money I would give to see Joe Biden wearing a Skeleton Crew miniskirt?
I think it would be a bad sign if that ever happened. He's staying up till 2 a.m. watching our videos.
Albertosaurus is officially our most cursed episode. We have failed to record it now several times. Our recording platform just crashed also, so apologies if Dalton is out of sync.
He shouldn't be.
He shouldn't be. We think we figured out a way to fix that.
Fingers crossed.
We'll see.
We shall see when somebody records this episode.
Hey, future Dalton, when the video is published or this is being edited, are you synced up? If so, say something in accordance with how your mouth moves. This is a dumb bit. Let's move.
How are you doing today? Today is Friday in California.
Dalton, why don't we release the animal?
Let's do that. Here they come.
Ooh. Oh, yeah.
Big boys.
didn't like the tone on that, frankly.
I like the tone on the noise they made, though. They have good sound.
They have a good sound, yeah.
Although, I do miss the continuous shrill screaming of the JPOG Albertosaurus.
I miss that a lot. I think we should add that in editing. This will be really labor intensive for whoever does this, which I think is me. I think I'm on slate for this one.
I had no idea that you were actually editing this. I thought it was me again.
Well, I'm happy to make you do it because, well, it's a Tyrannosaur, but I'm also happy to make you do it because I think that every time they make a sound, you should put that sound over it, which will be literal hell.
That would be the worst.
Just sitting there marking every time they make a noise.
Interesting idea. No.
Man, that was a good game. Controversial take.
I miss JPOG.
Oh god, it was very good.
I liked it a lot.
We should do some JPOG content someday.
I think
we
really
should.
Yeah.
If memory serves, I think there was a mod for at least the original Jurassic World Evolution that did replace all of their sounds with the JPOG scream.
Ooh,
That's
Thank
tight.
God. Yeah, let us know in the comments if you want us to do JPOG stuff.
I own
JPOG,
3 games.
JPOG being Jurassic Park Operation Genesis.
People know what it is. They're watching our channel.
That's a fair point.
I
But
had
do they
3
know what
games.
this is? Oh, sorry, Alex. Go ahead.
I was just going to say I had 3 games on my PlayStation 2. Operation Genesis and Star Wars Battlefront 1 and 2.
nice.
And it was a beautiful, peaceful time. And I would kill each of you to return to it and have no memory of my life after it.
Wasn't it great?
It was.
I just miss all those all those afternoons I frittered away on Battlefront 1. Just loading up instant action again and again each time.
Yeah, and you couldn't even sprint, and I didn't care.
I will never forget my mom getting annoyed hearing Dr. Sattler and myself getting annoyed, like, I'm sorry, but you can't afford to do that. What are you going to do about this? A dinosaur is sick. And just hearing that over and over and over.
I just hated the way that the what was her name? I think it was like Jane Powers was the executive assistant who was new to the game who kind of handled all the other audio.
Oh, yeah.
When she'd just be like, message from Dr. Sattler.
Yep, message
I
from
was
Dr.
like, that's
Wu.
not a good
Message from
sign.
Dr. Wu.
I don't know what happened in my evolution as a person, because according to that game, I was almost never in the red. I had financial responsibility, and now I'm here as a graduate student, so I must have forgotten something along the way.
I used to be financially solvent.
You know, that game was the first game I ever, I went into the config files of it and edited it, because it had a really, really low limit on how many dinosaurs that you could put in the game.
You edited the game to have more?
Island.
Yeah,
well,
it's really easy.
Yeah, so I just went in and set it to 9999999, and then it was
Were
just
you doing that
screw you.
On the PC?
Yeah, on the PC.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, this was never an option for me.
Yeah.
I had an old Xbox.
Guys, if you want a hit of nostalgia, have you ever gone back and watched the intro animation?
Oh, yeah.
The hand of God reaching down. It's so cool.
I wish that was how you actually place dinosaurs in that game, when it's just literally a big hand coming down and just dropping a T-Rex onto a hill.
Oh, T-Rex.
That was that was one of the first games that I played on a console ever.
Mm-hmm.
Let me take you guys back for a moment. Are you ready? So
I'm back. I'm with you.
You're back with me. You're on Long Island in
What's that
the
awful
early
smell?
2000s.
Thought we were in
Hey.
Lasorna.
We're not on Staten Island, okay? Or even worse, New Jersey. There was a place, maybe about half an hour from where I grew up. It was just called The Game, and it lasted for a very short period of time. It was basically just a video game cafe where you could come in, you could book time on a TV that they had all the systems for, and you could just take a game off their shelf and just play it. I don't remember what the pay structure was, because I was maybe 8 years old when I went. It was for
Concept of
somebody's
money
birthday
didn't
party.
exist at that point.
We used to be a
and-
society.
We used to be a society, and
We
I
were
went
a
in
country.
for a friend's
God
birthday.
damn it.
And I just walked in, and my parents were like, "Oh my God, James, there's a Jurassic Park game." So immediately I was like, I'm going to play that. I don't think I spoke to this friend for his entire birthday party. I sat the fuck down and I played Jurassic Park Operation Genesis, which I was terrible at. Although it was I was kind of terrible in an interesting way. I was making enclosures that were way too large, and I was trying to design them too well with lots of water features and everything, within the limits of that game.
Sure.
And then like the couple of hours that we had for the party was over, and I had to stop playing it. And I had been playing, and the copy they had was for Xbox. And so I assumed it was for Xbox. I didn't realize that games came out for multiple systems. Mm-hmm. And that's why that year for Christmas, my parents got me an Xbox and Jurassic Park Operation Genesis.
Nice.
And I played it for like 2 weeks straight. And around this time, this is coincidental. It wasn't because of any of this. I got a really bad ear infection, and my eardrum ruptured.
Jesus.
So like, yeah, no, it was bad. And so there was like just pus pouring out of my ear and everything. But I honestly was like almost indifferent to the whole thing because I was so transfixed by the game that my parents would come over and they'd like change the dressing to like help drain it and everything. Like I was really sick. We have no idea why I got this ear infection. It was a couple days after Christmas. But it was like, I wasn't even complaining. Like I'd just play and they were able to do whatever they had to do to take care of me. It was honestly, I know this sounds terrible.
Unhinged.
It was a magical time in my life. It was the first time that I think I ever really, it's the first conscious memory I have of entering like real ADHD hyperfocus of like, this is all I care about is just this game in this park.
Doctor, should we anesthetize the patient? No need. He's playing Jurassic Park Operation Genesis for the Xbox 360.
You laugh when they, like, if you ever like, I don't know, meditated or gone to like some sort of like, you know, I don't know, not hypnosis, even therapy, when they tell you to like think back on a happy memory of a time you were truly happy.
Oh, I meditate.
Right. This is one of my rotation of just true happiness memories. Like even, I guess what I'm saying is even as sick as I was and how much pain I was in, the happiness of like JPOG and that Albertosaurus running around screeching that I started the game with was really enough to just make it all kind of secondary importance. I was very happy camper.
I know exactly what you're. When my colitis was much worse when I was like in 6th and 7th grade, I would have like terrible, painful symptoms like every hour. But if I was like wrists deep in a Lego, like just gone, like oblivious, I'm like, oh, it's fine. And then my parents would be like, hey, you were doing that for like 4 hours. I'm like, really? I didn't notice. It's nice that things can do that.
I really appreciate that, like, you guys like are sharing these wonderful core memories of these happy times and stuff. And like, when I think of JPOG, I mean, I played it a lot. I played an absolute ton of this game. Mm-hmm. But when I think back on it, for some reason, my core memory that is like the little inside out, they pluck it off the shelf and look at it, is when I played one of the challenge missions for the first time of doing a photo safari, and I didn't really know how to control the car, and I just ran over an entire pack of Dilophosaurus and killed all of them.
Yeah, my core memories with this game were sweet.
Heartbroken. It was just like, oh no.
I remember the first animals with a car.
Yeah, the small ones.
Yeah, the small dinosaurs you could kill in that game, because remember there was also the thing of there was another one of the challenge missions where it is the euphemistically entitled retire function. Where it's just you snipe a T-Rex in the head from a helicopter.
Right. Honestly, that game went pretty hard. I feel like that's something missing from like evolution. Like the evolution games are definitely like the edges are sanded off. They're better games, but the edges are sanded off like that. Like in JPOG, it's a mixture of like this should be a fun Jurassic Park game, but if something goes sideways, you have to kill the T-Rex.
I don't know if it's. I mean, in that you can't kill the animals, which I kind of like. Like I don't know, I don't like murdering them personally, but. The way people die in this game is much harder than the way people died in other
Although, like, I do find it almost a little bit more comical in this game, because like some of them they're like long and protracted and stuff, but they're so bloodless that it's like even in some of the ones where it like it's like a brutal way to go, it almost feels like slapsticky. Like I know that like the concavenator human kill animation that we didn't see in our video has it running up, like grabbing someone by the arm and throwing them against the ground so hard that they bounce higher than its back sail is tall. Like, and it's just like, that would be one of the, like, that would be a horrific thing to witness happen to a human, and I want to see it do it like so many other times because make human go bounce, and it's really funny.
Yeah.
No, I mean, just like the T-Rex kill animation on people when it would get out and it would just shake them a lot and then swallow them whole. Like, I don't know, there was something. There was something very chilling about it.
Or sometimes even more chilling when it would grab them, shake them a bunch, and then just walk around with them in their mouth while they're still screaming, and then just shake them a bit more. And it's just like, oh, that's bad.
Yeah.
I have a controversial take.
What's that?
Shoot.
Which is that I like it in my monster dinosaur movie when someone is killed in a fun and sometimes over-the-top way.
I do too.
People are... the mosasaur scene in Jurassic World, people are babies about, and it's pretty cool, actually.
I don't hate it. It depends on the tone of the movie for me. For me, it's more about the tonal mismatch of those scenes versus the other stuff in these movies than the fact that it happens.
I'm sorry, that's a very stupid opinion.
Okay. Well, this is Albertosaurus.
You don't say.
Yeah. Scott, want to say what his name means?
Absolutely. So this dinosaur you see before you is Albertosaurus sarcophagus. And it gets its name from the Canadian province in which it was discovered, Saskatchewan. And sarcophagus comes from the ancient Greek sarko and phagi, meaning flesh-eating. It is the same... I believe it's ancient Greek. I see it's James Greek, opening his mouth, so I assumed I was wrong.
Greek. No, it's Greek.
Okay.
It's all Greek to me.
Yeah, there we go. And it is just, and it is the same exact word, same spelling as like the tomb thing that you're imagining in your head when you hear the word sarcophagus, which is like when you explain it out, it makes sense for why they call it that, but it is a very melodramatic name for a coffin.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, it eats the flesh. Scott, just to tell you, if it were Latin, it would be carnivorous.
Another great name.
Right. That would be a really good name.
Yeah, if honestly...
If it were Latin, it would be Alfredo, wouldn't it?
That'd be if it was Italian.
If it were Italian.
Hey, every Italian man believes that they are descendants of the Roman Empire.
They all do. So yeah, so this is Albertosaurus sarcophagus. It was named in 1905 at the end of a paper that did something that completely overshadows it, as it has been overshadowed for its entire existence as a taxon, which is that it was named in the same paper that named T-Rex.
By enemy of the channel.
Enemy of the channel and known super racist Henry Fairfield Osborn. If there were like tiers of racism, like Henry Fairfield Osborn's like 10th prestige. Like he got all the way up the ranks. So just for anybody who hasn't seen our videos where we've discussed Henry Fairfield Osborn in the past, Henry Fairfield Osborn unfortunately named a lot of everybody's favorite dinosaurs because he had access to a tremendous quantity of resources because he was from a very wealthy railroad tycoon family and kind of oversaw the development of the American Museum of Natural History. He was placed in charge of like developing their paleontology collections. And not through his own actions, through the actions of better people who he hired, they amassed a wonderful fossil collection, and he got to name a lot of it. The sad part of this is twofold. One is he was a horrible person. Right? Again, this is not everybody in the past would be considered racist now. The man founded the American Eugenics Society and wrote the preface not once but twice for a book that would later be called The Personal Bible of Adolf Hitler, which he considered hugely influential in developing his views and how to proceed with the eugenics program.
It's weird that they called it that. That's
right. No, I mean, Hitler referred to it as his Bible. Like, literally,
I was making a joke of, like, it's really weird that they would make a book called The Personal Bible of Adolf Hitler.
Right, especially before they knew who he was.
Exactly.
Yeah, so, like, he's a bad dude. Mm-hmm. The other component of this is that he honestly, and I say this having read a lot of his papers for my own research, because a lot of the animals he named are kind of foundational to the work we do, right?
Tyrannosaurus, Velociraptor.
Tyrannosaurus Rex, Albertosaurus sarcophagus, Velociraptor mongoliensis, Oviraptor, Ornitholestes, Struthiomimus, a lot of really important dinosaurs. His science is honestly not great. He was not a fantastic anatomist, and a lot of his interpretations are kind of lacking. so this is, and again, this is not revisionism of like he was a bad person, so I'm going to say he was a bad scientist. There are a lot of bad people who are actually fairly good at the science they do. It's a shame when that happens. Unfortunately, you know, being a good person morally or ethically does not necessarily correspond with your ability to like write a good anatomical description. But in this case, it shows that pretty well.
I remember in one of our recent videos, James, you mentioned that there's a T-Rex skull at the AMNH that he individually labeled the bones and wrote on them, and he's wrong.
On all of them. He got everything wrong.
Oh my god.
Nothing he said is correct.
How? Not even the tooth-bearing ones?
Oh, no, it's the brain case.
Oh, okay.
But he also got some of those wrong. Like, I forget
there's teeth coming out of this. It might be a frontal.
I think he decided the lacrimal was actually the prefrontal in a lot of these things. Like, he's off the mark on a lot of this stuff.
He wouldn't fit many beans in his skull.
I don't think so.
No. He wouldn't know where the beans would go.
And
right, exactly. He'd be like shoving them down the olfactory tract. Like, man, I can't get enough beans into this hole.
I think it's important to note that, like, we like to clown on Henry Fairfield Osborn.
Oh, we do.
In part because he deserves no respect, and in the other part because the magnitude of his racism is, like, shocking to a like, darkly humorous degree. But we do want to make it clear that, like, the continued existence of racism, as well as the specter of this man's own racism, is a very serious matter. And we do believe it should be taken very seriously, even if we do like to clown on him because he is a terrible person.
Right. No, it's incredibly serious, and it has had these ramifying effects through the development of our field in general, right? Like, his racism wasn't the kind where, like, he wrote about dinosaurs, but he secretly didn't like non-white people. Like, his ideas about racism and eugenics were baked into how he understood evolution, which colored how he interpreted everything. And how he designed exhibits at the American Museum of Natural History, where the original Hall of the Age of Man, as it was called, literally showed evolution culminating in a white Englishman's skull.
Yeah.
It is like so, as Dalton said, it's darkly comical, the degree of his
we're talking about a man who would make H.P. Lovecraft blush.
Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, probably directly inspired a lot of...
Right.
Well, I mean... Like, it's so bad that, like, as we've said, like, this is not just, like, a man who is racist and studied dinosaurs and had a lot of racist ideas and stuff. Like, this is a level of, like, hatred and bigotry that far exceeds the bounds of dinosaurs.
Yes.
Right, and would then also go on to affect the actual world.
And who was unfortunately also just an influential person in society at the time.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, again, he's one of the few paleontologists who I think there's a legitimate argument to be made that he contributed to the Holocaust and to World War II. Like, I mean, his writings had a direct role in the development of Nazi ideology in Germany. Yep. These things are connected, and it's just he contributed to great crimes. Not to mention all of the things that were done domestically in the United States,
as did the United States government at the time.
Right. Right. A lot of sterilization, a lot of inhumane acts. And we do plan to eventually make a video about Henry Fairfield Osborn, but as I'm sure you can understand, for a topic of that kind of magnitude, we're doing a lot of research and we're
treading carefully.
It takes a very long time to find someone's grave and buy shovels and dig them up.
I have shovels.
Scatter them.
Can you imagine the YouTube thumbnail? Like, we exhumed the body of Henry Fairfield Osborn. Unboxing. Yeah, so Albertosaurus was named, and it has this long... it was named in the paper that described T-Rex for the first time. It actually named 3 Tyrannosaurs, just like one after the other. It's a short paper. So you get Tyrannosaurus Rex first, and thank God it's first, because after Tyrannosaurus Rex was Dinosaurus imperiosus, which is also a pretty cool name. I think Tyrannosaurus Rex is a better name.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it turns out that Dinosaurus is the same dinosaur as T-Rex. Among the misinterpretations that Henry Fairfield Osborn made were that a bunch of ankylosaur scutes that were found near this skeleton were attributed as belonging to it.
Which would have been really cool.
And so one of his ideas...
T-Rex.
Right, basically it was T-Rex is the unarmored one, Deinamyosaurus is the one with armor plates. Now again, if he had been a good anatomist, he might have recognized that these were not, like these were ankylosaur scutes, and they were obviously ankylosaur scutes. But
So is that why some earlier reconstructions of T-Rex have like osteoderms on it?
I believe so, yes.
Really?
That's kind of cool.
Yeah, I think that's
Yeah.
right.
I'm looking that up.
Yeah, no, so those were those two. And then afterward, he made a note that some specimens that had been referred to as a different taxon in Canada needed to be moved to their own genus, and he proposed the name Albertosaurus sarcophagus as the new genus and species to contain those remains. And I'm looking up the paper right now because I don't want to get it wrong. So basically, the material that's now known as Albertosaurus, or that's now the holotype of Albertosaurus, had been referred to as a species of Dryptosaurus. And this is kind of we talked a little bit in the Megalosaurus video about this, right? That in early days of paleontology, it was very common for like new remains to just be made a new species of like the one existing genus from the same relative age and stratum. Mm-hmm. So like almost all theropods went through a period of time where they were a species of Megalosaurus itself.
Mm-hmm.
Right. In North America, for a long time, Tyrannosaur remains were very broadly just made species of Dryptosaurus. And sometimes they were made species of another genus that was based on some large teeth from Montana. It was called Dinodon. And actually, until the 1970s, the group that we now know as Tyrannosauridae was called Dinodontidae. That was considered to be the valid name for the group. Dinodon means terrible tooth. It's not a bad name.
It's a good name.
Yeah, it's a good name. But unfortunately, the Dinodon teeth are not diagnostic, and so the name became invalid, and so they erected the family Tyrannosauridae instead, which I think is nice. It makes it very clear what we're talking about.
Even if it makes frustrating things such as this is a Tyrannosaur, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Well, we'll do Phylogenum soon, don't worry.
Homonym notwithstanding.
Yes. One thing that I think is worth noting, because I've seen the holotype material of Albertosaurus. I've seen, by this point in our channel's history, I've seen a tremendous amount of Tyrannosaur material in museums throughout this country and Canada. But about a year ago, I had the privilege of studying the holotype and paratype specimens, which are at the Canadian Museum of Nature. And they're in kind of rough shape, especially considering the quality of preservation you often get from the Horshoe Canyon Formation, which is where this is from. And the reason for this is that the person who discovered them, or the team that discovered them, were not paleontologists by training. They were surveyors and geologists working on mapping the geology of Canada. It was led by Joseph Burr Tyrrell. If you know your museums in Canada, his last name should sound familiar. He's the namesake of the Royal Tyrrell Museum of Paleontology.
Cool museum, that.
It's a great museum. And so they found these large dinosaur skulls, and they decided they were going to excavate them. You know, by God, they were going to get them out of there. And they basically destroyed what is now the holotype. They lost most of these specimens in the process of trying to excavate them with poor materials.
If you ever feel like you made a goof, just remember, other goofs have been made.
Yeah, if you ever very confidently look at an IKEA piece of furniture and you're just like, I could put this together by myself without ever assembling something before, and then you completely royally screw it up. Just imagine if that was the most important specimen of a Tyrannosaur.
Right. And, you know, sometimes I think it's really inspiring to know that sometimes you find a dinosaur fossil and you try to excavate it and you fuck it up so royally that you basically destroy them and leave them nearly non-diagnostic. And then they name an amazing museum after you.
I'm going to just counter that. If you can't put together IKEA furniture, I think you should be forced to live on an island.
Everyone jokes about it all the time. I've literally never had an issue putting together a
so
single piece
easy.
of
It's so
IKEA
easy.
furniture.
No,
It's designed for idiots and babies.
The only factor, like, the only confounding factor sometimes is size. Like, if it's just kind of too big for one person to do.
Right. Yeah, it's the only time I ever had trouble with it was like, you know, those kind of rotary things where you like put in the screw and then like the kind of the circle thing snaps. I didn't understand how it was supposed to work the first time, and so I messed those up.
You figured it out.
Well, then I was like, oh, this is what they do, and I undid the joints and redid them, and then it was fine.
Right.
Yeah, the only difficulties I've ever had with them are poor materials, where like I've done that and then it's snapped, and I'm fun.
Right. The desk that my computer is on right now is an IKEA desk that I've disassembled and reassembled many times with no incident.
Except for the harmonics.
The IKEA right off of I-95 in New Haven is like a religious pilgrimage site for all like the new students, and it's just like because there's like a week of the year where it's just packed.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And people are like, I gotta get my bed's an IKEA. It's a solid bed.
My chair. What bed do you have?
I don't remember the name, but it's nice.
Yeah. No, I have an IKEA bed as well. That cube thing is an IKEA. The couch isn't IKEA. The couch is.
Wait, why are we doing advertising for IKEA right now?
Hey, IKEA, pay us.
Yeah, IKEA pay us
either in money or in meatballs.
Can I say what?
Preferably the horse ones. Go on, please.
Yes, just an idea that I had when I was in IKEA last week, because they have collaborated with Lego in the past. Like, they sell some Lego stuff at IKEA. Why is there not just a Lego IKEA? That would be such a fun.
Isn't that just a Lego store?
It would build a big store. Like a Lego IKEA store, and you build it, and you get to build all the little showrooms, and they're each a different theme, and they've got little different minifigs, and like that would be a very fun build.
Dalton, I think it's time to drop out of this field. I think you could be paid an enormous amount of money to work for Lego. Go for it.
Anyway,
do it. Live a good dream.
Okay. So anyway, this is Albertosaurus, and
probably also like Swedish meatballs.
I don't know if he did. He might have.
I bet he would.
Yeah, he has that look about him.
What? Explain.
See the way he's running mouth agape?
Imagine instead of a goat.
Oh, gee.
Oh,
I forgot that. Oh, okay.
He's telekinetic. Now imagine that was a nice plate of Swedish meatballs.
I appreciate that it did the swallowing animation, and then the goat, instead of doing what I thought it would and like disappearing, just flopped limply to the ground behind it. That was a hell of a kill animation, though. I like how it used its horns, I guess.
Yeah, just.
Was that a segue to discuss the horns?
Yeah. James. This guy's got a. Okay.
I know everyone's joking about the Swedish meatballs, but actually it's the lingonberry stuff and like the cinnamon rolls that are the go-to for me. That's all.
Cinnamon rolls.
I've never eaten food in an IKEA before.
You should.
Okay. So the horns?
Yes.
Shall we? Yeah, so Dalton, can we zoom and enhance on the horns?
Pervert cam.
I can certainly engage pervert cam if we're so inclined.
Let's see if we can get one that's in the sun.
I was going to say, I'll find one in the sun. This is a pretty.
Does this qualify as pervert cam because it's not its feet or mouth?
Well, the camera itself is the
pervert
cam.
So yeah, so there's a couple things going on with the way they've done the face here. There's a lot of discussion in like paleo circles online about what we know or don't know about the integument of the face. I am not incredibly sold on any of the individual hypotheses. I think it's a hard thing to really know. I don't see a lot of evidence for this idea that there's like a row of really, really big scales right at the kind of bottom front part of the snout, like just behind the nostril, like right over those first teeth. Dalton, can you kind of show on the model where I'm talking about?
Yeah, like in here,
like over the largest maxillary teeth.
So are you talking about like these scales in like above the lips or where the lips would be?
Like the really big kind of pebbly scales there.
Yeah.
Because I mean the reconstruction of the large scales in that region is usually like without the lip, right? Like it's just like
it's above the lip always, or it's above where there would be a lip.
No. But he's saying without a lip covering the teeth.
Yes, like it's
usually
mutually exclusive.
Well, not always. Okay. No, I mean it's based. I think it comes back to an infographic that I think Mark Whitten may have done, and it's based on T-Rex. And I will say, of all of these things, T-Rex is the one that I think there's the most case to be made for, because T-Rex is partially diagnosable by this like row of 2 to 4-ish, I think, big polygonal depressions on the maxilla, right in that area, where it really does look like something was sitting in there.
Oh,
okay.
And so if that were a big scale or like a feature scale or something, I wouldn't be incredibly surprised. You know what I mean? What? Why are you laughing, Scott?
It just had the dumb thought go through my head of that's what my therapist. That was what my therapist diagnosed me with big polygonal depression. That just went through my head. It was such a stupid joke.
My depression has many faces to it.
Right. Please get us out of here.
So anyway, I think that this interpretation of that just being a continuation of the scalation over the rest of the face is fine. It's really difficult to know things about integument from just the bone.
Yeah.
What I want to fixate on a little bit more is the surface of the nasals and the lacrimal crest here, or the cornual process, as we call it in the field. The surface of the nasals in tyrannosaurs, and this goes pretty down in their evolutionary history, is pretty rugose, and it appears to be covered in a big cap of keratin. I don't know if that's what they're trying to communicate in this design there.
Would you like me to look at it from the front?
Yeah, maybe. That might help.
Frontal.
Yeah.
Albertosaurus, now in full frontal.
See, I would just say that's more scalation.
Yeah, that's what I would say.
So, I mean, there is probably, like, they do this in Prehistoric Planet, right? Like, there's a big kind of keratinous pad over the nasals in the Tyrannosaurus that they depict in that show, and that seems to be borne out. The surface of the bone, especially as they mature, gets, like, really kind of hummocky. It's marked by these big canals and holes for neurovasculature, and it's really rugose in a way that we usually associate with keratinous attachment. So it seems likely that there's some sort of like big, hard, corny boss there that's developing in Tyrannosaur nasals. And that's widely distributed. It's not just in T-Rex. Albertosaurus probably would have had it. I've seen it in almost all of the large-bodied Tyrannosaurs that I've seen. Now, Dalton, if we could move to the side.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just looking at the illustration of the skull of Albertosaurus, and the nasals definitely have that sculpturing.
Yeah, very, very highly sculptured. And it's honestly like it's like that in juveniles too. Like this is something that occurs pretty early in their life, although it gets much more exaggerated as they grow. Now, with the lacrimal crest, Tyrannosaurs generally have a horn of the lacrimal bone that is situated anterior to the eye. It is the lacrimal bone. You can kind of see this pillar of bone in front of the eye here, Dalton. You might be able to trace it where the bar of the lacrimal is.
It's marked by different scalation, even.
It is, which is interesting. I like that interpretation. The lacrimal is shaped kind of like an inverted letter, or like a backwards letter 7. It's a forwards letter 7. I'm sorry. I was like Scott for a moment.
Hang on.
Catching strays over here.
Letter 7?
Oh, number 7. Sorry. Yeah, all right, whatever.
It's a disaster.
It's a total disaster.
You spent too much time with me. You've caught it.
Right. So in some of them, it's much more like angled and 7-shaped. In some of them, there's more of a right angle. But there's a rostral process or an anterior process that kind of goes along the front of the snout to the side of the nasal bones. And then there's a ventral process that forms the bar in front of the eye socket, the preorbital bar. And that's where the lacrimal duct passes through, which is what the bone gets its name from.
What's the distribution of the T-shaped lacrimal? Is that like a Coelurosaur, like in some groups of Coelurosaurs and not Tyrannosaurs? Or do they have what we would call a T-shaped lacrimal?
The T-shaped lacrimal is a dromaeosaur thing. It might also be a troodontid thing as well, but I don't think even Oviraptorosaurs have that.
No, I think
or maybe Oviraptorosaurs do too. I think it becomes T-shaped because they lose the prefrontal, and I think it's...
Yeah,
I've seen some interpretations where it's being fused in, right?
Oh.
Yeah, that's got to be it.
Yeah, so it does become T-shaped in some of these animals, but in these guys it's L or 7-shaped.
Sure, sure.
But at its dorsal margin, there's a horn. And the degree of development of that horn varies in these animals. In Albertosaurus and daspletosaurus, among some others, there's a big triangular horn. And that's undeniable. I think this is depicted as projecting very far forward in a way that is not likely. The horn in these animals is generally almost vertically directed. Sometimes it's a little bit tilted forward, but in the specimens where it seems like it's very tilted forward, my read is that it's just deformed. This is a kind of tall, narrow structure, so it's easy for pressure to reorient it.
Yeah. Just to clarify for our audience, you mean post-mortem deformed taphonomy, not like a deformed individual with some kind of pathology or
mutant.
Yes, that's what I mean. Right. Taphonomic deformation. So the heat and pressure that these things experience in the earth often affects their shape. Fossils are usually sheared at least a little bit. Yeah. It's rare for them not to be. Next
time you go to a museum, if your museum has a cast of a T-Rex skull there, we can almost guarantee that it's AMNH 5027. And if you look at that head on, it's italicized.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. It's sheared really strongly. So the corneal process on the lacrimal in this animal would project up, to my read of Albertosaurus's anatomy, it should be projecting straight up, and it's probably illustrated a bit too big here. In all honesty, the biggest horn in a Tyrannosaur that I'm aware of is actually in Daspletosaurus. Like, Daspletosaurus turosus has a huge horn. About this size relative to the skull, but again, it points straight up. Now, there's also a corneal process on the postorbital bone, and you might guess from its name that the postorbital bone is behind the eye socket. I know.
I was just going to say real quick. What about like on Daspletosaurus? Is it also larger than like things on like Alioramines?
So Alioramines actually don't have a big triangular horn usually. They've got a different conformation to this. It's more of a conical projection.
Chinchosaurus kind of does.
Oh, you know what? I'm thinking of Alioramus itself. Let me take a look at Chinchosaurus and I'll offer my professional opinion.
Scott's got him. Scott's got him on the ropes.
I think I only missed by like one letter this time.
No, you're right. Chinchosaurus is similar, although I would say Tyrosus's is bigger. No, that's right.
Scott.
I've been looking at Alioramus a lot recently. I've been scoring it in my matrix. So I'm sorry for the brain rot.
Scott, this is your moment.
It is.
Don't forget it.
Yeah, that was a good moment. But yeah, in Alioramus itself, it's quite small. I'm gonna minimize this point where I was just clowned on by my friend here.
We know you will.
Yeah,
it's fine.
No, I mean honestly, you're right. I had forgotten about how big Chinchosaurus is, but I would say I think Tyrosus is bigger. Tyrosus is just Daspletosaurus tyrosus has a shockingly big horn. I am always surprised when I look at it. So the postorbital.
Is that why it's called Tyrosus?
I don't know if the etymology was even given by Russell. I'm going to take a look now. I feel like Russell was just like,
you keep talking, we can do it. You keep talking, we can do it.
All right, you check.
We'll be good. We'll be good keep boys and ghouls.
Right. So the postorbital bone also has a corneal process. And this corneal process can take on a variety of forms. No etymology?
Oh, according to Wikipedia, the Tyrosus comes from the Latin for muscular or brawny.
That is also from the Australian Museum.
Lame.
Well, this is cited from Russell. I'll peer into the paper.
I like brawny. That's pretty good. So this corneal process on the postorbital will always... I will eventually get to the postorbital horn. It's okay. It can take on a variety of conformations. It seems like there's a lot of individual variability in this feature.
Oh, cool. Does it have a Catholic name?
Oh, it's confirmation. That's so stupid.
I know.
Its confirmation name is Joshua. Anyway, sometimes it kind of projects like it almost looks like a tab projecting outward and kind of upward from the skull. Like I'm kind of miming with my hands what it would look like a little bit. In some individuals, it's much rounder and it's kind of situated more on the body of the bone, and it's like this big kind of rugose boss. I think what they've depicted here is the more kind of like lateral tab morphology. All of these structures would have been covered in keratin, and so I think that this continuation of just the skin scaly texture here is probably not correct. Like we know these things are big and rugose and have a lot of the same kinds of osteological correlates that the nasals do. It would have been a big keratinous, almost armor-like covering.
Cool.
Now, there's also, not only are some of these horns a little bit too big, but there's also some inaccuracy with how they're depicted. These two horns are shown contacting each other in the, like, above the eye.
Yeah, like right in here.
And in almost all Tyrannosaurs, they were actually separate. I say almost all because in Tarbosaurus and Tyrannosaurus, there is occasionally the development of a palpebral ossification. which
really?
yes, which bridges the gap between those and would have formed a continuous like eyebrow over the eye.
And
Now I don't know if it's like I don't think it's the same kind of palpebral that crocs get. Like I don't think it's homologous, but it's called or ornithischians. I don't think lizards. I don't think it's homologous because I don't think it's forming within the supraorbital membrane. I think it's like an accessory osteoderm that characterizes these incredibly large tyrannosaurs.
Okay, that's cool.
And I should note there is. I think there's an interpretation. I don't know. I thought I just saw a cockroach in my room. I'm sorry.
He went into predator mode.
I went into predator mode. There's an interpretation that these are like these horns, the corneal processes, are not actually developing out of the bone, but that they are osteoderms that fuse to the bone as the animal grows. Kind of like the epiossifications of a ceratopsian.
Sure.
So I don't know if that's like settled, but it's certainly an interpretation that I've seen a lot. So it's possible the palpebral is just another one of those that winds up developing. The palpebral, I should say. Now, Albertosaurus is not one of the Tyrannosaurs that's known to have that ossification, so the lacrimal horn and postorbital horn would be separate. There's also this continuation of the horn onto what seems to be an interpretation of the squamosal bone, and that's not correct. There's no Tyrannosaur with any sort of like obvious ornamentation of the squamosal like that. This is also a weird place to have that because it's where the postorbital and squamosal kind of articulate like a slot and groove. They articulate like the postorbital forms a prong, and it slides back into the squamosal, which receives it like this. So there wouldn't really be a horn on that kind of articular surface. So anyway, the takeaway, the lacrimal horn's probably a little too big and it's too anteriorly directed. It shouldn't be connected to the postorbital horn, and there shouldn't be this tail continuing backward along the skull after them.
Now,
that's my piece about that. Also, the nuchal crest on the skull is a little too small, I think.
So why do you hate this design so much, James?
now I have a question and a note. I have information and a question. First information, there is etymology in the daspletosaurus description. Russell does give etymology. And it is as follows: dasplete, from frightful, sauros, lizard, and taurosis, fleshy, with reference to the large body.
Oh, like that even less.
Taurosis being like a bull, right? Fleshy.
And the question I have is regarding the horns. Do you think they would be as depicted here, covered in a continuation of the scaly skin, or would these be keratinized structures that would probably be more your classic horn?
I think they would be keratinized structures like a classic horn. Yeah, I think that this is... It's a weird example of under-keratinizing a Tyrannosaur skull, because I think there's a lot of art I see where they almost look like they are pieces of armor that the animal is wearing. I don't like the way it looks when it's like not integrated into the rest of the tissue. But this is kind of an overcorrection maybe, where instead of like really overplaying the amount of cranial armoring, they're just covering it all in skin, which looks naturalistic. I don't think it's quite correct.
Wait, James Napoli doesn't like how Tyrannosaurs are being reconstructed sometimes?
Oh my god. But like, I mean, for a contrast to this, we could maybe look at Chinjasaurus at some point, which they depict with a tremendous amount of keratin over the skull.
But well, Chinjasaurus is almost a little bit weird. Like, yes, it has keratin, but they're almost displayed like they're giant scales, because it actually kind of segments off the lacrimal horns that it has. So like it's a weird example. So I guess a better representation would be Carnotaurus, even though it's not a Tyrannosaur.
Right, maybe. Yeah, I mean, also the thing about the nuchal crest is probably worth bringing up. Tyrannosaurs have the massive, like, rectangular flange of bone coming up the back of their skull. That's for anchoring enormous neck muscles and jaw musculature.
Gotta keep that head up.
It really leads to a distinctive kind of, like, boxiness at the back of the skull, because there's no way to reconstruct it without giving it, like, this kind of rectangular outline, or almost trapezoidal, like the skull's got to expand a lot. I think that the designs in this game in general, and this stems from the earliest Jurassic Park movie, like, don't really depict the anatomy that a big nuchal crest would necessitate. In this case, something like Prehistoric Planet is much more accurate. right? Where you've got like the skull clearly expands in height toward the back, and there's massive, massive neck muscles attaching to it.
Thick neck.
A thick neck. Does anybody else want to say something, or should I continue hating this design?
Well, there are behavioral things to talk about. There's Phylogenum to talk about. Well, we kind of been discussing integument a little bit. We could talk about some scales.
Yeah, why don't we talk about scales?
Sure.
So, Dalton, you pulled some stuff up, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. I was taking a look at that. So there is, speaking of integument and the scales that they've put over the horns, obviously this animal is depicted as a scaly feller. And this is not without reason and support. So there are patches of skin known from a number of tyrannosaurs. You've probably most famously heard of the small patches from the underside of various T-Rex specimens, which look to be naked and potentially scaly, although many people make the observation that it's difficult with some of those specimens, especially of T-Rex, to say, are we looking at what we would consider scales, or are we looking at what might be naked and wrinkly skin? So if you imagine preserving a piece of scales, and if you imagine preserving something kind of really wrinkly like the wattle of a turkey, and this isn't to say that that would be like a display structure, but just to give you an idea of the kind of texture I'm talking about, those could, under the right preservational conditions, perhaps be confused for one another. But there is skin attributed to Albertosaurus, which pretty clearly, at least in my opinion, shows that these are pretty polygonal defined scales. That Albertosaurus, at least portions of its body, were covered in the kind of classical polygonal scales that you see in a lot of dinosaurs with preserved integument. And notably, the Albertosaurus skin features some feature scales. It features the feature, if you believe it or not.
What's a feature scale?
And so a feature scale, and I'd love to show you on this model, if we can zoom in. That's an unfortunate thing that the model does not have, really, are feature scales. So the model, as we zoom in here, has these nice polygonal scales, which I think is a pretty good representation of what you can see in the fossil record of Albertosaurus. But at least some of Albertosaurus's body would have had, if you consider these kind of uniform-sized small scales, we would call those like the basement scales. They're kind of like the background. And the feature scales are larger scales that sit in between and kind of scattered around the body. These most famously, feature scales are visible on Carnotaurus, if you're familiar with the integument of that. And for a long time, those are thought to be osteoderms. And we'll talk more about that when we talk about Carnotaurus. But it's the same thing, where that pattern of small scales making up a background is broken up by larger scales that kind of fit in every once in a while. And almost certainly these would have been important for display and the coloration of the animal. It's interesting to note, and I don't have a verification for this, but it's something I saw, that apparently Albertosaurus is only the second known theropod to have feature scales. The other being Carnotaurus. I cannot verify the veracity of that, so if I'm wrong, it's not my fault. No, if I'm wrong, I take responsibility for that, and I don't want to spread misinformation, so take it with a grain of salt.
Now, do we think that's something that probably evolved convergently?
I guess it would depend on the distribution of it. I don't think we have enough data to know.
Because there are some in ornithischians too, right?
Yeah.
Well, Triceratops famously.
Mm-hmm. I think it's probably convergent, but it's also like probably trivially convergent. That some scales would be different size.
That's not hard to. Yeah.
But I think this model does a good job of showing the kind of the scalation texture, more or less, that we see in the fossils of Albertosaurus. And we were talking about this earlier before we recorded. It does a good job showing kind of the scale of dinosaur scales, whereas when you get up close to the model, you can really see, oh, it's covered in all these tiny scales. But when you zoom out, you don't really appreciate that. The scales are simply too small relative to the size of the animal to appreciate unless you're right up next to it. And that is the case for pretty much every scaled dinosaur. Every dinosaur that has scales, I should say.
Yeah, dinosaurs just don't do the thing that that squamates do, and I would say crocs do as well, with like really big scales all over the body that you can see obviously. Yeah. Like every dinosaur we've ever found, it's just this pavement of like couple millimeter wide, tiny little scales. it's something weird, and I think it's actually something we touched on in our prehistoric planet reviews, because I think we mentioned that there's like a tendency for some of the largest dinosaurs in prehistoric planet to look a little shiny, or a little almost plasticky, and I don't think that that's the fault of anybody. I think that's a tech limitation with like how you need to downsample the resolution on the skin if you're like rendering an object that large. Right? Like rendering the little light and shadow that would maybe exist between individual scales on an animal the size of like Dreadnoughtus or even Tyrannosaurus Rex in some shots would just be too computationally taxing. Yeah. Right. I mean, like, I'm sure it could be done, but I don't think it would be feasible for a project of that scale.
No, and also it doesn't really matter.
No pun intended.
Hey,
I did it again.
Who's this guy?
Yeah, I did that same joke before we recorded. Yeah. But yeah, again, this isn't a criticism of the show. I think it's just like a consequence of how you render small features at different sizes. The small dinosaurs in prehistoric planet, I think uniformly, and the small animals in general, look like you could touch them, right? Like you can almost feel it, right? I think the larger animals I think there's just a computational cost that exceeds feasibility to show the details on the scales. But I think it underscores the fact that we also might just not really know in our brain what to expect a large reptile to look like when it has scales that are that small.
Skill issue, I can imagine it.
Well, like we can imagine it, but I think it's something our brain might kind of balk at.
Scale issue, rather.
My brain doesn't bulk. I see it perfectly.
Okay. Well, I'm sorry. To quote Red Letter Media, you may not notice it, but your brain
did.
Right.
Another question might come up with respect to the integument of this animal, which is feathers? ? And the answer is probably
feathers.
To some
Period.
Extent.
Feathers. Period.
I won't make such a strong statement, but I will say that phylogenetically, these guys are well within the groups that we know have feathers, and we know they have feathered close relatives. However, we cannot also ignore the direct evidence that we see that they did have scales. And so the very, very likely thing is that where we're preserving scales, we're probably not in an environment that's great for preserving feathers. These probably had feathers to some extent, but those feathers would have coexisted with the scales. I don't think it's unreasonable in a depiction, especially like in this game, to not have any feathers for computational reasons, for fidelity reasons, for not wanting to speculate. But I think that if you look at like the Chinjiaosaurus from Prehistoric Planet, where it is a very clearly a scaly animal, but when they get up close to it, you see it does have little feathers, little hair-like feathers. I think that's a very reasonable interpretation of what's happening.
I agree. I love the way they depict it in Prehistoric Planet because they really they do make it easy to see them while also making them quite small. Yeah. And my feeling is that large theropods in general probably would have heavily reduced the amount of visible feathering just for thermodynamic reasons.
I've always used the analogy to artists or people who are just more curious about it, that like when we say that things like T-Rex and stuff like that would have had feathers, like keep in mind they would have had feathers in the way that elephants have hair. That from a distance you don't really see it unless it's at maybe in some key places, like tufts at the end of its tail and stuff like that. I could see even larger Tyrannosaurs possibly having maybe some near the back of the neck, some along the back of the arms, some at the end of the tail, something like that. But that are either there that serve a more functional purpose and so therefore are more large than the rest of them. But other than that, you wouldn't really see them unless you were closer than you would like to be to a large carnivore.
Right. If you can see the texture of these scales or these feathers, you're too close.
Yes.
Right. That's actually the text that was written on every small scale. It was millimeters large.
It was on their bumper sticker that if you can see the size of my scales, you're following too close.
Very funny.
I think it may be worth commenting on kind of there is a bit of a paleo art meme that goes around, and this might be the time to talk about it. Of people depicting tyrannosaurs, mostly Tyrannosaurus, but it's a lot of other Tyrannosaurs too, with kind of a cape of feathers almost, where they're like, oh,
Yeah.
and that mostly stems
Like Anjanath and Monster
yeah,
Hunter.
that mostly stems from the fact that by pure chance, most of the skin impressions and fossils we have from tyrannosaurs are from the underside of the animal. I don't think it's an unreasonable, speculative, and fun take to give like more density of feathers in these areas, especially because we don't know. But I think it's probably a more reasonable interpretation to imagine that if we were to get skin from the upper part of the animal, it would probably be somewhat similar to the other skin that we're seeing, especially because we're not seeing like big reticulate scales like we have in like Conchvenator and maybe Allosaurus.
So there is a little bit of precedence in some other feathered dinosaurs.
That's what I was looking up.
cape.
Like I thought maybe
Kalingidromius,
like Tianlong or something.
sort of, but Ornithomimus appears to have, at least preservationally, feathers on like the dorsal side of its body in the back, but bare skin ventrally, or at least not preserved feathers there, which might be part of where the meme's coming from.
Bear skin?
I think the meme predates the discovery of those.
It does. I think it recalls a little bit. Well, there's two things. One is it recalls a little bit an image of a World War II plane with bullet holes in it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Of like, it's like we've found data here, but where we didn't find data, that must be where the feathers were hiding.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But I think a little bit of it is also like there was, and this kind of happened, I would say, when I was like maybe like late high school or starting college. There was this huge push in paleo art to make everything densely feathered.
Mm-hmm.
I thought, didn't this come from like that game that no one likes?
It came from Saurian, yes.
Well, yeah, Saurian started a lot of this too, and I remember a lot of this going on. But there was that push to make everything densely feathered. Like, I'm sure you guys remember, like, the images of really densely feathered T-Rex, densely feathered Therizinosaurus, densely feathered Dinosaurus. When that was finally published.
the densely feathered Therizinosaurus has become very much of a paleo meme in and of itself. Like, I think it's a really, really cool depiction of it, where you can almost not see the tail because it's like so densely feathered on the back. But it does make it kind of frustrating. Then it's just like, I want to show people the anatomy of this animal. It's being covered up by these super long, weird feathers that it probably didn't have.
Right. And I think there's these waves in paleo art, right? In how we depict things. Like, there are waves where I think there's a pull toward making things very avian. And then there's an overcorrection to making things much more reptilian.
Mm-hmm.
And I think some of that is driven by discovery, right? Like, we know that a lot of hadrosaurs and sauropods had a fringe of keratinous, like a keratinous crest along the midline of the body, right? Like an iguana has, which is something that feels very reptilian. Mm-hmm. But we know a lot of those animals had that. So there was this push to make all theropods because, like, we were beginning to understand that feathers are almost certainly ancestral for dinosaurs, if not a more inclusive group. That everything must have been just like a bird. And I would say I think that's a little bit overstated. So then I think that collided with the fact that there was emerging data on the integument of tyrannosaurs from the underside of the body, from the venter of the body, where we're seeing scales. And so I think that is kind of what drove everybody to say, well, they must have been very feathered, so I guess the feathers were restricted to the top. That was kind of my read on the situation. I don't know if that's entirely true.
That's my read as well, but it may have also been to an extent informed by like Kalingidromius, but
I actually think it might go a bit earlier to Tianulong, because Tianulong actually does have really what?
It's also got like a.
It has a really, really pronounced, most of the feathers that it shows that are really long are along the back. So it's like, hey, there's a precedent for this in other feathered dinosaurs.
I mean, also large ratites have kind of some regional stuff to them too.
Well, and this is the thing I was going to say. There isn't no reason to think this.
Yeah,
no, we're not saying that.
Well, I mean, I've heard discussion of the developmental fields for feathering. Basically,
feathered tracts. Yeah, that was another thing.
Well, but this is even more than the tracks. It's just there's major regionalization of the body where you could turn feathers on or off was the idea. With one of them being the tail.
God, I thought those were the same thing.
No, feather tracts are like hair tracts in humans. They're the lines that feathers tend to grow in. like because they're not
okay.
evenly distributed over the body.
I misinterpreted those charts when people put them out. Then
no worries. Yeah, feathers like hair isn't like this. Hair doesn't grow at regular intervals. There are hair tracts, right? Like if you look at like a person's head, it's not even hair. Like it's not even growth of hair over the entire head.
I think what Scott's thinking of in terms of the feather stuff is that people were like there was a lot of and thought of fuzzy young and like scaly adults. And that feather pattern, that early developmental stuff, is that like the pathway, the paths along which feathers develop, are set down early in ontogeny and not something that changes like post hatching.
Right.
Which is why it would be unlikely to have a truly fully like featherless adult if the juveniles had feathers.
Yeah, and I mean I think that the idea of an ontogenetic integumentary change is a little far fetched. Like I'm not aware of any modern animals where that happen. Like again, it can the hair can become less dense. I'm sorry.
It's a perceived change. It's like it's like
actually, I can think of one where it happens pretty frequently, which is in adult human men.
Well, right. I was going to say if it changes, it's that you get more.
No, adult human men go bald all the time.
Yeah, I'm like
right. Sorry.
Well, I mean, yeah, but that's not truly a lot. That's just like
I mean, it's a hormonally regulated thing. Like I don't think there's any kind of pattern baldness in birds, to my knowledge. But like,
I mean, they can get sick.
Given millions of years of evolution, things can happen.
Yeah. No, baldness in birds is generally a self-imposed thing. Yeah. Like it's something. It's a stress thing of their plucking their feathers out.
Right, and I mean, Dalton, your point is well taken on my end, but I think I think balding is. Yeah. Well, it's not body wide.
No, it's not.
Right, like it's a restricted thing that happens in like one part of the body. But generally the rule is like you increase the amount of body hair or body covering as you grow. You don't lose it. But you certainly don't change to a different color.
It's usually like a sexual selection character, right? Like, or is that BS?
I think that's an evopsych thing.
Oh, so probably fake. Damn.
Well, I mean, like, listen, something's probably going on. Like, gorillas can also get male pattern baldness, apparently. So it's something that's deeper in the primate family tree.
So maybe it is.
But who knows? I think it might just be that the testosterone is doing something, but I don't know.
Gotta get that T-low.
But regardless, the feathered zone area that I heard, I don't, and I want to stress this, I have no idea if this is actually borne out by developmental data. But the idea was that you basically had 3 or 4 zones in the body where you could have feathering. I think it was a torso zone, like a venter of the torso zone, the dorsum, the legs, and the tail. And so the idea was that in Calindrodromius, what happened is you just turned off the tail zone. And like these are major regulatory zones where like the presence of feathers is separately regulated. It's a cool idea, and it doesn't not map with basic principles of Evo-Devo stuff, but I don't know of any research that has really shown that that's the way feathering is controlled. There's got to be some truth to it, though, because a lot of birds lack feathers on the legs, right? Or at least some do. Like you think of ostriches.
Well, I mean, if we want to get like something I've thought is in Calindrodromius, like what if those are like the feather-derived scales of the bird leg?
I think I've heard that talked about before for Calindrodromius,
right?
Which I could buy.
Yeah, I could buy it too. I mean, the only thing I will say is like ostriches have bare, naked legs. Like,
not every scale on a bird's leg is one of those like they have proper scales,
right?
It's just some of them.
And for, like I know that there's some like birds that have bare legs that can be bred to have feathery legs. Pigeons and chickens are fantastic examples of that.
Right, and I guess what I'm saying is that to me says there is some truth to the idea that that is like a separately regulated area that you can turn feathers on or off. Yeah. But aside from that, I'm not aware of a lot of support for the idea.
Right, there was that paper that like was cooking up weird scales and gators with like feather signaling molecules.
Cooking some gator scales.
Which is neat.
Yeah.
But I don't remember a lot of it, so I don't feel confident talking about it. It's all very plastic and pliable, is what it seems like.
Yes.
I thought it was very keratin.
Right.
Which is flexible.
I will say that an animal as large as Albertosaurus probably could not have been covered in a lot of dense feathering.
No,
I don't think it would have survived.
No. Yeah, and it's one of those things of like we touched on earlier with like the not like feathered subadult and scaly adult, but it's something that they do again do a good job of showing in Prehistoric Planet of that, like even if the number of feathers doesn't decrease, the density would decrease if you're just getting bigger.
Yeah.
Right.
That like it's like if you look at the cursed left out in the rain Jim Henson's Muppet that is a baby Asian elephant, and then look at an adult Asian elephant. The baby Asian elephants are like very, very hairy looking, and the adults are not. And that's not that they necessarily lost that hair. It's just that they got a whole lot bigger, and the space between those hair follicles has expanded.
James,
I'm sorry, I just had a roach hallucination. Albertosaurus is a member of a fairly derived group of tyrannosauroids. And so to go into its precise position, I want to go to the base of the clade, and then we're going to work our way up. So Tyrannosauroidea is the broader clade that includes all animals that we colloquially on this channel call tyrannosaurs. This includes a range of animals like the Jurassic to early Cretaceous crested Proceratosaurs. There's two representatives of those in the game. There's Proceratosaurus and there's Eutyrannus.
Indeed, yes.
This is the first group of tyrannosaurids that we know about. They're kind of weird looking relative to the rest of them. I suspect there are many more of them that await discovery. They seem to have been pretty widespread, and they lasted for a long time. After this point, we start finding these pan-tyrannosaurs is the name of the group. In the fossil record. Their fossil record starts probably in the late Jurassic, whereas the Proceratosaur record starts in the middle Jurassic, but it depends on the position of some key taxa like Stoxosaurus and Juratyrant, which are both Jurassic tyrannosaurs. They appear to be... I'm sorry?
If we lose them, where does it start?
If we lose them, it starts in the early Cretaceous, like Dilong.
Okay.
Right. Also, Aotyrannus, I think, is quite older than Dilong. Aotyrannus is like really early Cretaceous. It's like Barremian. And that is a pan-tyrannosaur, as we currently understand it. Now, there's disagreement on whether Stoxosaurus and Juratyrant are Proceratosaurs or pan-tyrannosaurs. They're only really known from pelvies, so it makes it hard to place them. We basically have like the ilium and the pubis.
Yes.
And there's a lot of remains that have been attributed to Stoxosaurus in the Morrison Formation, but without overlap, we can't know. So it's possible we have more of it, but we don't really know for sure.
Okay.
Anyway, the pan-tyrannosaurs start really small. Dilong is about the size of a real velociraptor. It's like,
tiny little man.
Long animal. It's like a little coyote.
A cutie pie.
It must have been adorable.
A little guy.
Dilong has a 3-fingered hand. It has the vestiges of cranial crests, but it appears to have mostly lost them. As the clade gets bigger in body size, there's this long period in the middle of the Cretaceous where they do seem to increase slightly in body size, but what seems to be happening based on fragmentary remains of animals like Electrosaurus from Asia and Moros intrepidus, which is also in this game, that was described by my postdoctoral supervisor, Lindsay Zano, is that they seem to be getting very fleet-footed, right? They're characterized by these really long limbs, proportionally, with the development of a structure in the metatarsals called the arctometatarsus, which is a shock-absorbing feature of the foot. It was first really described and studied by Tom Holtz for his doctoral thesis at Yale.
Which, in a bit of Phylogenum history, led to the erection of a clade of Tyrannosaurs and Ornithomimosaurs.
Yeah.
And troodontids.
Yes, and Troodontids.
Right.
Which is not real, but
right.
Someone had to figure it out.
Right. No, I mean, it was not a bad idea. It was just overturned by more research. But it does appear that the arctometatarsus configuration is just something theropods do when they get long legs? Because I think noasaurs also do it, right?
They have antarctometatarsus.
What does that refer to again? It's that so metatarsal 3 is getting wider, the other two are narrowing? Okay.
Yes.
I thought that was when there weren't bears.
Bare feet or no bears?
I hate that little sound bite so much.
You have already ranted about this in a previous video.
Have I?
Yes.
Okay. So...
Yeah, it's a posteriorly expanded metatarsal 3.
I see. Okay.
It's like I like that it's like it's the flip side. It's the antarctometatarsus.
Right. But yeah,
that's a fun little name.
It's fun, but within Coelurosaurs, right? They're like Tyrannosaurus, Ornithomimosaurs, Caenagnathids, and Troodontids all have this tendency toward development of an arctometatarsus. So yeah, so in these intermediate Tyrannosaurs from like the Middle Cretaceous, we have evidence that they're getting to like not huge body sizes, but they're getting a little bit larger. But like Utahraptor size, like they're getting fairly large.
No joke.
No joke. Yeah, they're not little guys, and they seem to be getting really fast. The problem is there's just a really poor fossil record of these intermediate tyrannosaurs. There's almost no overlap between the different taxa, so it's really hard to reconstruct their evolutionary relationships. Like, we've got Timurlengia from Uzbekistan, which is like a brain case and assorted referred material. We have Moros, which is a leg from North America. We have Suskityrannus, which is probably the best represented.
Oh, yeah.
But Suskityrannus is still not a very complete skeleton, but it's got a little bit of a head. It's got parts of the whole body.
More like Suskityrannus.
Suskityrannus.
Electrosaurus is just a leg. There's
more
more
like Electrosaurus.
Is Electrosaurus only a pantyrannosaur?
Electrosaurus is not a tyrannosaurid, I don't think.
Okay.
I said more like Electrosaurus.
I heard what you said, Scott.
So when you get up toward the top of the tree, you start to see these increasingly large-bodied forms. As currently generally appreciated in Tyrannosaur systematics, there are Dryptosaurus and Appalachosaurus, which are known from Eastern North America, what's now Eastern North America.
And there was also then...
Well, it was a different... it was the continent Appalachia at that time. It's...
Doubt.
Well, it was. They were isolated.
A shallow sea, a baby sea.
Anyway.
Have your own tectonic plate. Doesn't count.
These animals are, fossils are rare in the eastern United States, and so there's not a lot of material of these taxa, but it does appear that like relatively advanced tyrannosaurs were present in eastern North America. The fossil record in western North America and Asia is much better. You have this animal from New Mexico called Bistachiaversor,
which I am unable to pronounce.
Yes.
Try it right now.
So this animal, Bistachiaversor from New Mexico, it appears to not be a tyrannosaurid, but it's quite robust and heavily built, so it seems to be like very close to the root of that group. Okay. And then you have this clade within Tyrannosauroidea called Tyrannosauridae. And Tyrannosauridae includes the most famous tyrannosaurs. You have Albertosaurus and Gorgosaurus, which together form a group called Albertosaurine. You have Alioramus and Chinchousaurus forming the Alioraminae. You have Daspletosaurus, which has various species, and the animal Thanatothoristes, which appears to form a daspletosaurine. And then there's also Teratophonius, Lythrinax, Nanuqsaurus, Tarbosaurus, Shuchengtyrannus, and Tyrannosaurus.
These are all very good names.
I'm sorry?
I like a lot of these names.
There's a lot of good names in this clade. Mm-hmm. There's disagreement in the literature about the topology of the within Tyrannosauridae. This basically gets at the root of this is that there's a matrix that was developed by Thomas Carr, and there's a matrix that was developed by Mark Lowen, and they give different answers, and they continue to give different answers. So it's a character selection issue and a character inclusion issue.
Worthy of note to find an opportunity where the internal topology of a clade did not change every time you reread an analysis.
This is true, but I just bring it up because I wanted to say I accidentally said those clades in almost the order Mark Lowen gets them, and I'm just trying to say that was not an endorsement of that topology. That's just the order in which I thought of them.
Do you think any of the people who would know that watch this channel?
Yes.
Oh, really?
It's very possible. So
Hey,
anyway,
we're growing in subscribers.
Yeah. So anyway, Albertosaurus, to make a very long story short, is an Albertosaurine tyrannosaurid. And Albertosaurines are characterized among tyrannosaurids by having longer, more gracile hind limb proportions, and generally being more lightly built than the other animals, which are all tending to approach like really, really heavily built, robust body plans, and generally very large size.
Those seem like very strong characters.
Very strong. The reason I bring this up in what was supposed to be a pivot to lifestyle is that it's generally interpreted that Albertosaurines were more pursuit-driven predators, that they were faster moving, and they hunted less heavily built or heavily armored prey, preferring things that they could try to outrun but were not able to defend themselves so much. Mm-hmm. This is not something we can really know from the fossil record, I don't think.
Well,
but something that we might be able to know from their fossil record is a little bit of their lifestyle.
Right.
Well, we can know that they might have been confident enough that they could outrun perhaps Oviraptorosaurus.
Ooh, we do know that.
Because of a gorgeous new fossil specimen, hot off the presses.
Yeah.
Of, could they daspletosaurus or gorgosaurus?
It's a baby gorgosaurus.
Of a baby gorgosaurus that perished.
Do we know how old?
In its youth.
It's 5 to 7 years old.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, a young. I don't.
Right, a young gorgosaurus that is also, I must emphasize, as large as a draft horse. Like this, when you say a baby,
small.
like this
Small man.
You
little
could
baby.
ride this. It's a little boy. It's a little guy. Small bean.
Tiny boy, little boy.
Continue, Alex.
Well, just a miraculous fossil.
Yeah.
Quite gorgeous, and inside of it are, drumsticks.
Yeah.
Oviraptorosaur drumsticks.
Light meat or dark?
Incredible. And that would be dark meat. So we
That
can
would be dark
confirm
meat.
that
They had good taste.
Yeah,
that,
indeed.
yes,
Yeah.
they prefer the dark meat, which is where all the flavor is if you're not a baby.
One thing that is also very interesting about this is that those, first of all, both of those Oviraptorosaurs were eaten within 1 week. They were not in one session. One of them is further back in the gut and is much more heavily eroded.
Cool.
So, like, it was clearly exposed to stomach acid for a lot longer. Based on the acid pH of modern crocodilians, they're estimating it was there for, like, both were eaten within a week. It was probably a few days prior.
Jeez, that's rough.
But they're also both, like, really young juvenile canignathids. Like, these are babies that this thing was hunting. Baby on baby
Prehistoric
violence.
Planet was correct.
Right.
Babies,
It's a beautiful
they
specimen.
just die.
It's also worth noting that this paper was co-authored by one of our colleagues, our friend Jared Voris, who's doing his PhD on a lot of aspects of Tyrannosaur evolution and has done some wonderful work on Tyrannosaur ontogeny.
And we're lucky that we spun this on the wheel now, because this paper and another one that we'll get to in a little bit just came out.
Oh yeah, like literally just came out.
Yeah, it's pretty cool how that worked out.
That was true chance.
Yeah. Well, especially because it's Gorgosaur. Like, it's not the same dinosaur even. Like, it's just, we by chance got a close relative of an animal that we needed to discuss.
They are very, very similar. James, I remember you mentioning in the Pachyrhinosaurus video that a paleontologist that you did not want to say by name once told you that the way that you can tell the difference between Gorgosaurus and Albertosaurus is that I'm probably going to get this flipped around, but it's Gorgosaurus is black and Albertosaurus is brown.
You did flip it. Dinosaur Park formation fossils are usually that kind of rich chocolate brown color. Horshoe Canyon tends to be darker.
Was this told to you by Henry Fairfield?
No. He told me that Gorgosaurus can only fit 50 mustard seeds into its skull, while Albertosaurus could fit 65.
We're having fun here.
They are very similar animals. But one thing that I think is worth noting, is because it does relate to the design, is that our general impression of what they look like is heavily informed by a stunningly preserved juvenile Gorgosaurus. Not the one with the stomach contents, but it's at the Royal Tyrrell Museum. It's panel mounted. It's in this death pose. It's almost 100% complete. It's a beautiful, beautiful skull.
We're dying good.
They died real good, the Dinosaur Park. So that juvenile Gorgosaurus, because it's so good, has become the unofficial model for a lot of depictions of these animals. And when they got to maturity, as we know from more mature specimens, they were more heavily built, and I will say, I think that this model is a pretty good illustration of their adult hind limb proportions. I would quibble and say I think the Metatarsus should be a little bit longer, but it's pretty close to this.
To loop back into enemy of the channel territory, what about the skull shape?
Oh, well, the skull shape would also be similar. I think that this is a little bit too tapering anteriorly for me. Like, it's kind of just rounded. Tyrannosaurs, like, I do think there is actually a little bit of a tendency to swell in the rostral region.
I was going to say, I've seen a lot of Albertosaurus depictions with a little bit kind of like almost an exaggerated nose on them, for lack of a better term.
And I think a lot of that is an artifact of crushing, but like, generally speaking, the upper jaw of Tyrannosaurs, like, in this, the tooth row appears almost flat. Actually, Dalton, could we perfect cam in on a little bit on that?
Certainly can. Let me find one in the sun.
Dalton, engage perfect cam.
Show me this guy's teeth.
Google, can you show me sir, you have a little bit of Oviraptorosaur in your stomach?
Yeah, so one, like, synapomorphy of at least derived tyrannosaurs, I forget the exact distribution, but like by Tyrannosauridae, all of them have it, is a very highly convex alveolar margin of the maxilla, which means that the upper jaw like swoops down really strongly. And often it gives the jaw a little bit of an upturned appearance at the end of the snout. This is not a very good illustration of that.
I don't know why, but something about what you just said made a niche RLM thing pop into my head, which is, this is a range of comics. When they review a math video, and that's all I have to say about that.
Cool.
Okay. We'll throw an image up on screen. The curve is more exaggerated than it appears here. Yeah. And again, the front of the snout should kind of upturn a little bit, and I don't think that the down sloping of the nasals is quite right. There's a lot of small details that I would modify about this model if I had the chance. I guess
this is also a rather unflattering. I don't like the coloration on this.
No, the patterning helps, and this is kind of drab.
Yeah, there's. I know that we've talked about it in the past, but it seems like there are on some animals like a favorite skin, where it's like they have one that's just a little bit different. And for Albertosaurus, maybe we can take a look at it when we eventually get to the species viewer, but they have kind of a weird choice, because I remember in the previous game when they introduced it in the Claire Sanctuary DLC, that they kind of did do the fun thing of like highlighting the brow horns as being red and stuff. And not many of the skins in this game actually do that. But there is one skin pattern that I think does something a little bit fun, where it has this kind of blotchy coloration that goes all over the whole animal. But there's one of the patterns has relatively subdued blotching over most of the body and very deep black on the face, which I find very interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the skins can matter a lot here, but there's just like, the skull is not quite on the mark. But I also don't blame the designers for that, because a lot of Albertosaurus skulls that you can actually find references of are heavily reconstructed. Because, and I don't know what it is, well, that's what I was going to say. I don't know what it is about the Horshoe Canyon Formation, but like, very few of these animals are undeformed in the way that Dinosaur Park skulls tend to be. Not that deformation is impossible in Dinosaur Park, but like, it's just, it frequently doesn't seem to be at the same degree.
Or they might have also been deformed by people who didn't know what they were doing when they dug it up.
Right, or in
also
one case...
post-mortem deformation.
There's another case of post-mortem deformation that is described in one of the papers that they wrote about the discovery of Albertosaurus, where at one point the Tyrrell was excavating on privately owned land that the landowner had given them permission to work, because there was a beautifully complete, and I think a very good skull, or including a very good skull, specimen of Albertosaurus. And for reasons unknown, the landowner decided that she didn't want them digging there anymore and destroyed the skull.
Oh.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sorry. I don't care if it's your land. At that point, we're fighting.
Yes.
Oh, I'm shocked by that. I did not think that was going to be the direction that went. Oh my god.
So we don't know who vandalized the skull.
Let's find out.
But the teeth and associated bones were smashed, and the quarrying tools were flung down the hillside. Some teeth and small quarry tools had been stolen, and the landowner ordered the museum crew off of her land. Oh, so I think that this was not the landowner. I'm sorry, I'm mixing two incidents. Somebody else came in and vandalized it.
Okay. And then maybe because there are vandals on their property, they're like, hey, you can't come here anymore because you're attracting vandals.
Well, but then somebody else, there's another story, but both premaxillae had been damaged. The premaxillary nasal suture was destroyed. Right maxillary teeth 1 through 5 were destroyed. All left maxillary teeth were destroyed. And the ventral edges of both dentaries were completely destroyed.
Good Lord.
Why? Why would anyone do this?
Oh, that's awful.
I mean, I'm
apparently the guy who vandalized the skull had also spent a protracted period of time befriending the crew there. And his because of the statute of limitations and the amount of damage that had been suffered, they could never prove that he actually vandalized it. And it says in the paper, and I quote right now, his pointless actions heavily damaged what would have been the best articulated skull of Albertosaurus.
Wow.
When was this? When did this happen?
1985.
Oh, so this was like well after the you could get away with shooting someone period of American history.
Well, this was Canadian history too.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah. All right. So he probably could have gotten.
Maybe
They could.
That's insane.
Do to him what he did to the fossil.
I've seen Trailer Park Boys. The Canadian police are not very good at their jobs.
The documentary Trailer Park Boys.
Hey, it is shot as a documentary.
it's a shame. But then here's another story.
Yeah.
I don't know why this always happens to Albertosaurus. During the excavation process in 1986, another Albertosaurus was discovered a meter or two below and slightly off to one side of a hadrosaur. This specimen was scattered and given a higher priority for collection than the hadrosaur. However, the same problematic and unpredictable landowner from 1985 again had issues that to this day are not understood, and work was delayed yet again. There was an ominous
to this day are not understood is
great.
such a funny little footnote in that.
There was an ominous turn of events when rifle shots fired by the landowner were aimed toward Royal Tyrrell Museum staff.
Wow.
You know, it is not often you get to hear the word ominous be used in such a euphemistic way in a scientific paper.
That's amazing.
Right.
So, an incredibly racist person named this animal sarcophagus. Do we think it's been inflicted with, like, the mummy's curse?
I mean, maybe. It took us like 4 or 5 attempts to record this video, and every skull appears to be guarded by, like, a jealous landowner, or the same jealous landowner.
What if?
They only got this specimen, by the way, because she eventually sold the land, and they went back to collect it.
I thought that in Canada, like, fossils on private land were still government property.
I think they are now. I don't know if they were
I
then.
think that's a newer
I guess
thing.
it's more recent than I thought. I thought I would have figured that was like a mid-1900s thing. Huh.
Yeah.
Someone was like, "Hey, can you make it so people don't shoot us when we try to do this?" I'm like, "Yeah, we'll see what we can do."
At the end of the acknowledgments of this paper, by the way, and I quote, "We should not forget the late Helene Lowen, 1923 to 2003, the Dunphy, Alberta landowner of the Badlands that yielded the 2 specimens of Albertosaurus. In a final twist of irony, her ashes were scattered not far from the quarry that yielded Albertosaurus TMP 1986-2005-1, the second of the 2 specimens that caused her such unwarranted distress."
Oh, wow.
I've got
What a complex
What a
tale.
eulogy.
I've got a theory.
Yes, Alex.
She was unwittingly in a Greek tragedy in which, in her dreams, she was sleeping on a just all these cool ancient dinosaurs, and Albertosaurus would come to her in her dream and say, "You cannot let anyone know that I existed," and tortures her. And she's like, "Oh well, maybe if they dig it up, it'll stop torturing me." And it says, "No, this will not happen. You can't let them do this." So she, conflicted. And then on her deathbed, she's visited one more time, which is, they came back and they took my bones. You will be forever trapped with me. And then her ashes were spread in the same place, and now she's stuck in the mental torture realm.
Maybe. Albertosaurus is the only dinosaur I've ever had an ominous dream about.
Is that true?
Yes, it is. When I was a child, I had a dream that I looked out my bedroom window and there was an Albertosaurus just lurking in my front yard and staring at me through the window. And it stared at me for like a long time until I woke up, basically motionless.
I've had so many ominous.
I've had a dream that's
dinosaurs.
almost exactly like that.
Oh.
About I think it was very, very clearly inspired by the scene in The Lost World.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
And it was a T-Rex. It wasn't an Albertosaurus. But wouldn't that be... Maybe we shouldn't post this video.
Maybe we shouldn't post this video. Maybe you and I should definitely not publish on Albertosaurus ever.
This
Might be a cursed
like,
creature.
I feel like we're doing something wrong.
Yeah. Well, anyway, we'll see if we're visited tonight. Is Albertosaurus in the room?
You don't have to
now?
walk home, motherfucker.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Dalton, you go pick him up.
I'm going to turn around and see just like the silhouette of a 13-foot tall animal hiding behind a tree. I feel like I'm being watched.
So one more note I wanted to bring up about this design before we move off of it and talk about the cool behavioral stuff that I know Scott really does want to talk about, and we will let him, is the length of the forelimbs. In this animal, the forelimbs are actually depicted quite a bit longer than Albertosaurus's really were. I think it kind of makes some sense intuitively that if it had longer legs, it would also have longer arms. But if you actually look at a skeleton of Albertosaurus, like, these animals had really, really short arms. Real small. They're part of the group Tyrannosauridae, which is characterized, generally speaking, where we know the forelimb by these really short, really reduced forelimbs already. This isn't something unique to T-Rexes, I guess what I'm saying. Like, this is more broadly true of these animals. And so, you know, again, Albertosaurus, like, the forelimbs are so small, they really, like, would not have even protruded much past the ventral wall of the body. Like, they're kind of tucked up there. So yeah, this is too long. But Scott, the behavior.
Indeed. So, the astute viewer might have noticed that we have quite a few of these critters in this exhibit here. And that is because Albertosaurus is one of the tyrannosaurs that, or James, correct me if I'm wrong, it's one of the only tyrannosaurs that we have at least some evidence of pack behavior in.
I would say we also have a little bit of Eutyrannus, but yes.
Okay.
Eutyrannus, like, there were three individuals found near each other.
Yeah.
But given the depositional setting, I don't know if that's coincidental or not. It feels too coincidental to be possible, but I don't know.
I don't know if that's... We'll get into that for this one as well, and I'll have to talk around a couple things. But... So, there is a very famous... I almost said daspletosaurus there. There's a very famous Albertosaurus bone bed called the Dry Island Bone Bed that was actually discovered by Barnum Brown. And it contains the remains of an estimated, I want to say it's like 26 individuals. And in the paper, it says, and I quote, this is, by the way, this is Greg Erickson et al., that is, the group seems to have consisted of 2 or 3 older adults, about 21 or more years of age, 1 17-year-old adult, 4 12 to 17-year-old subadults that were undergoing exponential stage growth at the time of their death, and 1 10-year-old in juvenile that was beginning the transition to exponential stage growth. A reopening of the site has revealed at least 1 more specimen, shown here to be only 2 years old. So this has been taken as evidence of a large family group of, like, I guess a large, like, almost like multi-generational family group of these, not even almost, multi-generational group of these large tyrannosaurs. And it has been proposed that this was due to something maybe analogous to a sorry. something specifically not analogous to a predator trap. Like it might have been something that killed them that wasn't like bringing in unrelated animals.
Sure.
So we'll use the standard like asterisks next to everything of just because they were killed together doesn't mean they died together. There is always the chance that like we like a lot of things like the Cleveland Lloyd dinosaur quarry in Utah, where it's like oops all Allosaurus, have been brought up in reference to this. And but given that it is a like, I do think at least from my cursory reading of the paper, I do think that there is some evidence for this being a group of animals that was together, but especially given the presence of the very, very, very young individuals as well. Or there could always be the case of like, this is also not a case of like, it's all or nothing of either these were entirely unrelated animals or they were in this huge like pack. There could also be the case where this is multiple smaller groups that were coming through an area and were killed on like relatively short sequence with each other, or killed in a different place and were transported here. Just happened to be Albertosaurus and stuff. But it is a very fascinating little bone bed that possibly indicates that these guys were friendly, were gregarious. And like, as we talked about in the cursed video that is Deinonychus, that there is some evidence for pack hunting in other species of dinosaur. And yes, and your level of air quotes that you want to put around pack hunting is based on your own predilections, but yeah, I think it's super interesting. And honestly, I do wish it was something that was more reflected in the game, because I think it's a cool feature of Albertosaurus. And
is it not one of the species with pack hunting?
No, not in the sense of I wish it was one of the species with pack hunting. But if memory serves, I think that like the population minimum for Albertosaurus is still 1, like it is with pretty much all other large carnivores.
I see.
And I think that might be something that no, it's under environment, the little cloud, I think.
Yeah, it looks like it's like 1, maybe 2.
Yeah, which like I wish that this was something that it was like 3 or something, where it's just like,
sure,
hey, these guys lived in little groups. But yeah.
Well, and
go on, please. I actually didn't have anything else. I was gonna say.
I think the story of the dry. So this bone bed is in what's now known as Dry Island Buffalo Jump Provincial Park. So it's often referred to as the Dry Island bone bed. It's actually got a kind of funny story because it was originally located by Barnum Brown when he was collecting for the American Museum of Natural History, and a lot of the material from it is at the AMNH. Mm-hmm. It seems that he and his colleagues either did not have a long time to spend there or were like overwhelmed by the amount of material. And so they collected pretty selectively. So like what's at the AMNH is mostly feet from these animals.
Hey, Barnum.
Was there a Tarantino on the dig team?
Maybe, but I think he was just getting things that were like easier to take out of there. Like it doesn't seem like he ever planned for a full excavation. And so Phil Curry, who was for a long time at the Royal Tyrrell Museum of Paleontology and was relocating a lot of these old Barnum Brown sites. And I think they've actually relocated almost every site that was like most quarries throughout Alberta that were mined by other teams have been relocated. Cool. They've done an amazing job of that. A lot of that's also been done by Darren Tanky, who is also affiliated with Tyrrell. The interesting aspect of the story that I've heard is that Phil Curry was like, he had found at one point when he located what he at least at that time thought was the site. He found a piece of rock that had an impression in it for what had clearly been a pedal phalanx, so a toe bone of one of these Albertosaurs. and he brought it with him to the AMH. And he literally picked up one pedal phalanx from the drawer and put this piece of rock next to it, and they snapped together because even in this almost 100 years since, there had been almost no erosion or weathering of the site, so they were able to perfectly match them. That piece of rock is in the drawer with this toe bone now, with a note from Phil Curry, so this is something I showed everybody whenever I would do those tours. It's just like,
so
look at this.
Cool.
And I mean, that kind of spatial memory is something that so few people have, to be like, okay, I found this. I know what I can test this on. You know, just to be able to, and it was perfect. So they've relocated the bone bed, and as Scott said, they've done more excavation there, and Phil Curry has published some surveys of the site. I also have his paper on this topic. Where again, there's not really any ability to confidently say there was gregarious behavior.
I think there's something to be said for, and you know, I don't want to lean too into existing, you know, sampling with mammals and stuff like that, because there's only so much that can be said, and also, you know, our very limited sample. But it does seem that the juveniles are feeding on small organisms, which is completely expected. Mm-hmm. It's not only in a few groups of pretty socially complex mammals are the adults like feeding the young.
Right.
So like, just because the juveniles are like going off to find something else to eat on their own doesn't mean there's like no amount of sociality in these animals. What I think, and kind of what leads me to think that maybe it's a more Deinonychus level of sociality if it exists, maybe something crockish or whatever, is that there was another recent paper that posited cannibalism in Albertosaurus.
Yes. I don't.
Yes.
But I should also say that I'm not convinced that they're actually showing cannibalism either.
This is also a very different kind of, like, to compare it to the Deinonychus, I don't think is a good comparison at all. Because the cannibalism paper purports a pubis, so a bone of the pelvis of what is referred to Albertosaurus, but it's referred to on the basis of we found this in the Horshoe Canyon. And so it's probably Albertosaurus, and they're probably right that it's probably Albertosaurus. But, you know, they take it with a grain of salt that it could be something else. And that they're like, they very clearly make the note that like this is almost certainly like post-mortem cannibalism, because it's on the medial side of the pubis, which is like there's bite marks that match an Albertosaurus on the inside of the pelvis of the animal. So this is something that
the bites are coming from the inside of the house.
If this is indeed cannibalism, and we shouldn't be shocked that animals would practice cannibalism, it is an Albertosaurus eating the corpse of another Albertosaurus.
Right.
But, I mean, as far as dinosaur cannibalism goes, there's not a lot of strong examples. I think Majungasaurus is still one, though, right? So.
Yeah. But again, almost every animal exhibits cannibalism, humans included. Like,
this is true.
It's one of those things that, like, I know we brought up in the Oviraptor video. There was just like, well, there really isn't that, more of a counterpoint in that one. It's like, well, there really isn't evidence that these things were like stealing and eating eggs or anything like that.
Right. And yeah, I can see
they did it though.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it was even if the evidence wasn't super strong that these guys were doing a cannibalism, they definitely did a cannibalism.
No, and Dalton, I see what you mean when like compared to a hand claw embedded in your tail, like I guess post-mortem scavenging is.
Yeah.
That's different. It do hit different.
It's also like, I don't know. I have a problem with this, and this I want to emphasize is not targeted at anybody in this call or at any authors of these papers. Also, the Albertosaurus cannibalism paper was also written by a friend of ours,
yes.
Colton Kopic, who we're working on with.
Congratulations, Colton.
Yeah, no, it's a cool paper. He's got some exciting stuff coming.
Congrats on the cannibalism.
But this is a line of evidence that I really don't like in like popular discussions of paleontology, because I think it's kind of just like not good hypothesis testing to say we can confirm whether or not they were social by whether there's evidence they killed each other or not. Like, I made this joke in a etymology video, but I was like, humans are one of the most notoriously social animals that exist, and we kill each other constantly. We have to have rules to stop us from doing it. We love doing it. We will look for any excuse to do it. And I mean, like, even if animals are like killing each other in some sort of violent confrontation, I don't think that that means that they were like aggressive antisocial loners that couldn't be together. In fact, I would say almost the opposite, maybe, because aggressive antisocial animals that routinely kill each other, or like that don't want to be near each other, don't often kill one another, to my knowledge. Like Wildlife Wire, if you're in the chat or if you're in the comments, please tell me if I'm wrong. I might be. But like among big cats, I feel like I've heard much more discussion of lions killing each other than tigers killing each other. Because tigers tend to, like, I think there are isolated cases where they'll kill each other, but they tend to disperse. Right? So I think...
wide range.
Right. Like, I think even if the Albertosaurus cannibalism was, like, clearly an adult Albertosaurus had killed another adult Albertosaurus and partially eaten it, I don't think that would be evidence that they couldn't have had a complex social structure. Like,
no,
oftentimes complex social structure comes hand in hand with violent intra-specific interactions.
Take the UN.
Right.
UN wish.
So
yeah, I mean, yes, I agree. I think that's a solid. Yeah.
Right. So
but, I mean, I'm on the same hand. It's why I'm also just highly skeptical of like association implying sociality.
Right. And like that's a fair point. I don't want to like. I'm not trying to make it sound like we should take any evidence for sociality. The null is still that they're not social. But
well, I don't know if the trick is like I don't know what the null should be in this situation.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I would say that generally, I'd say the null should be what's plesiomorphic, and I think the plesiomorphic state is probably that they don't have complex social lives.
Well, yeah, I mean, like if we're saying complex, but like I don't know, there's complexity in crocs. There's a lot of complexity in birds. Is like schooling complex social behavior in fish?
Yeah, I mean, maybe I'm off base, and maybe we should just assume that these like, and I don't mean it.
Well, I don't know.
Right?
Yeah.
It's hard to know. But the association of the specimens is interesting.
Yeah, now I think that like there might be an argument to be made that archosaurs or even archellosaurs are at least like the null hypothesis is that they're tolerant of one another. Because, like, crocs gather in masses, even if they don't really do anything with one another. Turtles do it. Like,
well, I mean, with the crocs and turtle association in mass is they literally.
Well, I know it's like a habitat use thing, but they're not chasing each other away. Like, they tolerate each other's presence, right? Like, these animals seem to at least have like a base level of tolerance for one another.
Yeah, no, I think you're right, Dalton. Like, I mean, I don't know if I'd call what most crocs do particularly complex, but like. They clearly can be near each other and not kill each other.
And they can fight, and they do fight, but...
Right. Yes. Right, but I think it's interesting because I think it's almost a way that like we're socialized as children to be like, conflict is not social behavior. Mm-hmm. Like conflict is a bad thing that is not part of being social or being nice. And it's not nice. But I think it's like, there seems to be a lot of intrinsic like...
Well, yeah, but there's no animals that are really asocial, right? Like, not really.
Well, I mean, like, how do you want to splice it? Like, a lot of big cats are like, they live almost solitary lives. Like, they will mate and then they will like not really interact with each other after that. Like, is the fact that the animal has to reproduce social behavior? In that case, then yeah, none of them are social because they occasionally see one another.
And like, is establishing territory a social interest? Like, is that like a...
Well,
is that the kind of, yeah, like...
Right, but I think we know what we mean by social. Well, we mean, like, are they forming a cohesive group that tends to stick together?
Yeah, I guess we should clarify between sociality and gregarious, like, sociality.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly.
Right, I mean, all of it's social behavior, but I'm just saying, I think that gregarious sociality probably, to some degree by definition... like includes conflict. Yeah. Like, and I mean, this is maybe my own personal viewpoint about how we could handle a lot of things like societally a little bit better, but I think acknowledging that conflict and violence is an outgrowth of social behavior and not an aberration built on top of it would probably be a good way of handling its presence and the fact that we don't want it. You know what I mean? It's like it's an emergent property of what humans do when they interact with one another.
Sure, and
right, like we don't have to learn it; it happens organically. Like kids
Dear
fight.
viewer,
and I think oh, sorry, yes, Scott.
dear viewer, come for the Albertosaurus, stay for the socio-political theory.
No, but I mean, I think, right, like, to Dalton, right, as Dalton was saying, like, even if all this stuff isn't just, like, you find turtles together because they have to be in the water, like, there's probably, like, sociality is probably emergent just, like, because organisms have to be in proximity to each other for resources, right? Like,
well, right, but I mean, I think
they have to.
I think if you define sociality that broadly, yeah, but I think I think it's important to make the point that Dalton made, like gregariousness is not sociality necessarily. Like, and when I say sociality, I mean, like, do they interact with each other? Like, are they just near each other? Or do they do some sort of productive interaction with another that isn't just establishment of territory and mating? Or like by happenstance being close by? Like, here's an example, and I think we should probably wrap up this point soon because we're getting very long in the tooth here. But like
a Tyrannosaurus.
So I have, or when I go home for the holidays in a week, we have a cat, and we have 2 dogs. And
Sure.
the dogs don't really bother the cat, but they also don't really interact with the cat. So they're often nearby each other. They will often get into the bed with my mom or my sister and like sleep. They're little dogs. So like they'll often all sleep in the same bed together if they want to be near a person.
Cute.
They don't, it's cute. They don't interact with each other. They don't play. They don't groom. They don't lick each other. They don't do any, like they're nearby. And they don't bother each other, but they're just close to each other physically. I don't think I call that social interaction. Like the fact that they are sometimes in close proximity is, I don't think, social interaction. Now, during the holidays, when one of my sisters comes back and she has 2 cats and she usually brings them with her because she's going to be away for the week, those cats interact with the other cat. And the interaction is not usually positive. They torment this cat, and this is my favorite of the cats, and so I always feel very bad for her. She spends the whole holiday week hiding. But it's very sad. But like they interact, like they'll go up to her and they'll like swat at her or hiss or like charge, or they'll stalk each other and all of that kind of thing. Like that's clearly an interaction that's different from what the animal does with the dogs. And I know that's a cross species interaction, but one of our prior dogs who passed away when I was in high school, and our cat at the time, would actually cuddle with each other and like do little grooming things with each other. Like they interacted to a degree that the current dogs and cats don't. That's in my mind the difference between what I'm calling social behavior and what I'm not. I don't care if it's like necessarily productive, but like, do they groom? Do they seek each other out? Are they, you know what I mean? That sort of stuff. That's what I would define it as.
You know what occurs to me? And I think it's important for the viewers for this to occur to as well. There is, in all likelihood, probably a well-developed body of literature by extant animal ethnographers dealing with exactly the stuff that we are just unfamiliar with because we don't engage with that in field.
Our animals don't do anything.
Yeah.
If we're converging on,
we could just look that
like a truth, or even possibly worse, like a 19th century version of a truth that's been wholly and totally debunked by serious scientists in the field, let us know, because we're doing our best. But every academic has blind spots because you can't know everything.
Right. And so I guess to just wrap up, my vision of what I predict in Albertosaurus, if Albertosaurus was social in my model, that doesn't mean they didn't fight. That doesn't mean they wouldn't opportunistically cannibalize their own members of their own species. It doesn't mean that they would, like, that the adults would hunt for the juveniles. But, like, I can imagine the juveniles, if they're frightened by some stimulus, running back toward the adults for security. Or, like, the adults grooming each other, or, you know, doing little nuzzling things, or sleeping in close proximity when they're touching. Maybe cooperatively hunting, or maybe not. Like, a lot of the, you know, and this is stuff we're learning from Wildlife Wire in our comments. And everybody, Wildlife Wire is great, and you should sub to them if you haven't already. They're a great channel, and we, you know, obviously I'm very flattered that they took a lot of inspiration from our stuff, but they are wonderful in their own right, and we're really happy that we've got another kind of long-form science communication channel growing alongside us. So please give them a subscription if you haven't already. Their stuff is really, really good. I've done a lot of work to their videos, so I feel obligated to at least recommend that you check out their channel. But in any case, what I'm saying is, like, Wildlife Wire pointed out that in modern, like, animals, these social groups are pretty flexible. Like, sometimes individuals will go out and hunt on their own, and then they come back to the group. And sometimes they hunt cooperatively, and sometimes they don't.
Okay.
Like, that's all possible. Yes, Alex.
So I was curious. So there's apparently something called pre-sociality, which it would be something like, according to what literature is available at a quick search, which is what jaguars do, where there's no association with the exception of courtship.
Okay.
Right.
And then there's something called subsociality, which is common, which is sociality in, like, parental care, but short term. It's in, like, a lot of winged insects, apparently. Solitary but social. It seems like there's quite, like Dalton suspected, there's quite a bit of development on it.
There's subgenres to this, like metal.
Mm-hmm. Two commonalities of parasociality are parental investment and socialization in a single cooperative dwelling. That's kind of neat. And then the highest level is eusociality, not surprisingly. With successive eusocial societies are overlapping adult generations with cooperative care of young and division of labor. And so that's in insects, naked mole rats, and then there's, like, areas between.
Interesting.
So I guess pre-social is kind of emergent, and they do consider fish schooling a kind of like a higher sociality here.
Given all that, I almost am inclined to retract my thoughts about, like, crocodilians and turtles. And what I personally now I'm thinking about it is, like, almost like an asocial gregariousness and, like, tolerance.
Yeah, it sounds like, at least from this, like, the what is considered sociality, like, requires some kind of cooperative action towards something. Which maybe, with crocs, I think we could do that, because they do cooperatively hunt.
No,
but turtles, I don't think.
Well, turtles will flip each other over if they're, like,
they're just buds. That's
I'm pretty.
Wait, that's so sweet.
I'm pretty sure, unless I'm completely making that up. I think if one turtle sees another one upside down, that they will help to right them.
Are there some enemy turtles that if they see someone up the right side up, they'll flip them on the back?
I know.
They call him Flipper Jones, and he's always out here.
But I can't speak.
But I think your point, though, is interesting, Dalton, because I think you probably need, like, gregarious tolerance before you can move into, like, higher, truly social groups.
Yeah, I guess, like, if you just kind of at the base of your group hate one another, you're probably never gonna.
Right.
Yeah, and that's why it's probably if you were to investigate this, or as people probably have, it's like something that emerges pretty. I'd be probably pretty easily when there's like incredibly tight species interactions or very limited resources, right? Because naked mole rats are like desert dudes, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I just I just think that this, and I mean, this isn't a dichotomy. This is just, I guess, my own stray thought. I just think that this obsession that I often see in, like, popular discussions of, like, well, we know they fought each other, so they weren't nice to each other, so they weren't social. Like, I don't know. I don't think they'd be fighting unless they were social. Like, at least with the frequency we find it at, like, Tyrannosaur facial bones have tooth gouges from other Tyrannosaurs all the time. Some Tyrannosaurs.
Tasmanian devils do that.
Right. A lot of Tyrannosaurs seem to have, like, really big, horrific infections in their jawbones from when those wounds became infected.
Pardon me. Yeah,
Tasmanian devils do that.
Right. Exactly. I don't think they would have been in those conditions if they were truly solitary animals that basically just established dispersed territories and only came together to mate. Like, I just don't think that would have been common. It's common enough that we find it a lot.
Well, like big cats, maybe it's something that's also apparently Tasmanian devils are predominantly solitary animals that do not form packs.
Well, I mean, forming a pack is also different, but right, that's a fair point. Yeah,
but maybe some Tyrannosaurs were Jesus Christ, were more social, and others
I can almost guarantee that with that very broad
That
scope,
is the
yes,
case.
probably some species were more social than others.
Well, let me tell you about. All right, I'll just do a quick 25-minute story about snapping turtles.
I've got an idea. Before we record this animal, though, somebody did make a joke that this should be the return of the Windows XP sound as these animals slaughter everything that we've previously shown from
I can
Dinosaur
certainly
Park or
turn on
Horshoe Canyon.
fighting.
Let's turn on
Let's
fighting and
Let
Let me
them
just save this so
fight.
that I can use this
save it the good version.
Riders on the storm.
Yes, I did have that thought as well. We should probably let them fight at some point.
Let them fight. Just
We
with
now
each
have
other
the-
or with other critters.
Oh, well, we have Struthiomimus and Pachyrhinosaurus in this enclosure.
And I think
being
maybe-
a true Horshoe Canyon.
We should add. I think we should include the Dinosaur Park animals as well in this.
Well, technically speaking, if we did include Eoplocephalus, Anodontosaurus, I believe, is from Horshoe Canyon, and that is what it really is.
Right, and I'd be okay with having Styracosaurus and Chasmosaurus in here because this is a point I think we actually touched on in the Eoplocephalus video. Like, Albertosaurus and Gorgosaurus are so similar. I am okay with just allowing this to be a much more inclusive brawl.
We're inclusive here.
We're inclusive in the brawl.
If we only had gotten to Struthiomimus, we could have done the atomic bomb versus the baby. It's like, let them fight.
What is this? He's a Styracosaurus.
Shit.
Yeah, and we haven't done anything else from the Dinosaur Park, have we?
No, we haven't done Parasaurolophus or Corythosaurus yet.
Damn, son, where'd you find that?
I could
the
throw in
wheels
some
does not like
Oviraptors
Hadrosaurus.
to be small,
To be little
well,
thematic.
Nathan's.
We
I'm
do
gonna
have
do
a-
that.
Let's do it.
A Saint Nathan.
Yeah, we do have a Kennick Nathan now.
You know, it's just a little big.
Where's I'm alphabetical.
Up there. It was. You can also search now, by the way.
I will never do.
That's fair.
There's not that many. You can scroll.
I've got a ton of Albertosaurus in here, so hopefully they're hungry.
Delete the
That's a good
food.
idea. Delete the food.
I like that we have heavy typing noises.
Sorry.
He's
We
hacking
always
food.
do.
He's no. Just like when you're like delete the food, and Dalton's like deleting food.
Computer, delete the food.
I've removed all food.
I
from
cannot
the UN
wait to
food
put the
bank.
Windows shutdown sound into this video again. It's been a long time since we've used it.
First the girls are fighting.
That was fast.
Social behavior.
Social behavior. Haha.
Haha. That's a callback to 5 minutes.
I like this, like, protracted.
Fun.
Oh,
Throw a
that was
punch.
cool.
Bounce.
I like everybody else just running like they're just in an extermination
running.
squad.
They're sprinting around. One of them's yelling.
While we wait for them to hunt, I'll express my opinion,
Right.
which is that I do find that like a monospecific bone bed of multi-aged individuals a more compelling potential like gregarious evidence than some other potential ones.
That is entirely fair.
I do too. There was actually a note that apparently one of the phalanges, like an isolated one in the bone bed, was large enough that Phil thought it could be a daspletosaurus.
Oh, interesting.
I don't know if that's ever been followed up on, and without more material, there'd be no way to know. Oh, do they fight?
Well, they might. They'll attempt to.
He's just doing his
Come on,
standard
Pachyrhinosaurus.
walk in place.
He's shadow boxing.
Put that thick nose to use. Dun 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 dun. All right.
Oh, I guess they
Okay,
decided not
never
to.
mind then, I guess.
Fights off. Well,
What died?
a new Albertosaurus because one just.
Oh, they're massacring them.
This isn't hunting. This is hatred.
They're killing for sport.
Isn't that like a line from War of the Worlds or the very good Tom Cruise War of the Worlds adaptation that people dislike for some reason?
People dislike that? It's great.
It was disliked when it
Yeah.
came out. I think it was too much 9/11 imagery for people right after 9/11.
I think it's
Oh, it
Ooh,
was,
it was Boston.
basically.
it's become more well liked.
Yeah, I think people are realizing that. Like, I feel like it was a pretty bold movie to make at that time. Like, it came out
It
and
was Steven Spielberg, right?
it was, yeah.
My man does not miss.
No, he doesn't. It's a very good movie, but I think, well, it was two things. It was that it was very, like, the visual language was so 9/11 inspired that I think a lot of people found it viscerally uncomfortable. Like, alien invasion movies are supposed to be, like, fun, and this one was sad, and it's not goofy. But the other is the fact that the son survives at the end. I think people felt like cheapened the stakes of him running away. Like, which I get a little bit, but it's Spielberg. He can't resist it being a happy ending.
Also, I think that's kind of that. I think that's from the original story.
Might be that I'm not sure of.
Can I, pursuant to Spielberg, Spielberg never misses. I am inclined to agree. However, did he direct or just produce Ready Player One?
He did direct it.
He shot, I think, one scene, which was the van scene.
Well, yeah, I don't really know what happened with that movie.
It's based on a book that people like for some reason.
Well, no, I mean, I just don't understand why it became a movie. Oh, wow, there's more.
Absolute.
The
Oh, there they go again.
Oh no!
See it again.
Oh, it's a bloodbath.
Oh god. Wait, did he do AI? Because AI is okay.
AI,
but AI was also not his script. It was was for Kubrick, and he was trying to basically get the movie finished.
That was a Kubrick script?
Yeah.
Yep. I know that.
I had no idea.
That movie.
It was picked up.
So sad.
I mean, I bet he probably could have done a good job. He was a very good director.
Yeah. Ready Player One.
I love the way they pratfall too. Like they slipped on a banana peel and just whee.
Whoosh.
No, Ready Player One for me just seems like Spielberg wanted money, and they were like, you literally have to do maybe 2 days of work for this, and the rest will be handled by the VFX department.
I could believe that.
It's like, tight. I need money so I can make a movie about wanting to bang my mom.
Oh.
Hey, it's a good movie.
No, I know. I haven't seen it yet, but I really want to.
Styracosaurus.
Well, I remember the ads came out, and I was like on board. I was like there with Dalton, because Dalton is like, this looks like a Aren't Movies special jerk-off movie, and I'm like, yeah, you're right.
We don't even get to see that one.
An incredibly tedious
worth that
movie.
Yeah, every once in a while, Hollywood feels the need to make a movie about how cool it is to be in Hollywood, and that's a movie I just don't tolerate.
And yeah, so I mean, I eventually sat down to watch it with my parents, which was a fun dynamic, because there are a lot of weird vibes, but
I do want to see
it. I was like, oh, this is it's very cynical. Like it's surprising from Steven Spielberg.
Yeah, I feel like people don't take. I feel like there's a degree to which people don't take Spielberg seriously because he tends to favor like optimism and like a little bit of like schmaltziness. Like, because as we know, being cynical is the only way to show that you're smart and think about things. It's not possible to have an opinion and to be optimistic at the end of it.
Correct. No.
Everybody has to be Matthew McConaughey's character from True Detective, but like in episode 2.
That's why it proves that I'm one of the least intelligent members of the Skeleton Crew, because Paddington 2 is in my top 5 favorite movies of all time.
Well, Paddington 2 is a very good movie.
It's such a good movie.
That doesn't say anything about your intelligence.
Okay.
I rank it a 2 for Avatar 2: The Way of Water. It's very hopeful.
Okay. It's a good movie that I like.
Very hopeful message.
Oh, God. I'm intervening. So, Amelia's not here.
Did we get it from Amelia?
Yes, we got a ranking from Amelia. Are you ready?
Yes.
A for Albertosaurus.
Makes sense.
Well spoken.
Yeah, fine.
Okay, I'll give my rank very briefly. I had a lot of design quibbles with this animal. That doesn't mean I don't like the design. I think it's overall good looking, and I like having it in my parks. It's a cool dinosaur. And I like seeing representation of a lesser-known Tyrannosaur. I'm going to give this a low A. It would be a more solid A if it were more accurate, but the level of inaccuracy bothers me, but that's obviously a me thing. I spend so much time with Tyrannosaurs these days that it's all glaring to me. I doubt anybody else notices.
I will also give it an A. I think it is, like, it gets across what an Albertosaurus should get across, that it is in a game like this where, like, as Dalton brought up in our video on the Cretaceous Predators pack of, like, oh, it's difficult to differentiate Tarbosaurus and Tyrannosaurus. Yeah, well, don't put Tarbosaurus in the game then. That, like, this meaningfully differentiates it from Tyrannosaurus in the ways that you would expect an Albertosaurine in general to do so. And I'm glad that they haven't added a gorgosaurus and have it be almost exactly identical. That, like, it's lighter built, it's a little bit leggier, and it has big ol' horns. I wish that more of the skins would highlight those big ol' horns and make them more of an interesting, like, display feature. But, like, I do like that, and Dalton, I do believe that it is this skin that has, like, it's the blacker face. That, like, I do like that you can kind of, like, draw attention to it and some of the coloration and stuff, but, like, it's good. I like having it in my game. It feels right. So, A.
Sure. Well, Scott, I like your rationale. And to you, I would say, is this a 2010 film starring Emma Stone that's remaking The Scarlet Letter? Because it's an easy A.
Hey.
Well said.
That's all I'm going to say.
No, I think A for Albertosaurus is absolutely correct. I kind of wish it had lips, but it also shares that design language with the T-Rex, which I think is important for the game to convey that they're related. And the few quibbles I have with it, I think the horns, I'm glad they put them in. I think they made them very ugly. I'm not sure why. That's personally, I don't like them that much. But the texturing of it is maybe one of the best textured models in the game. I really think they did an excellent job. So yeah, A.
And with that puts Albertosaurus squarely in A tier with last week's relatively similar place and time critter.
Yeah.
Okay.
It is time.
It's time to spin that wheel.
Spin.
Spin.
That
wheel.
Wild.
Wheel. I mean wheel.
Wheel.
Round and round it goes.
Are you going to spin it, Scott?
Yeah.
There we go.
Woo.
Round and round it goes. Where will it land? Nobody knows.
Oh.
It's
Majungasaurus.
It's Majungus.
Speaking of cannibalism.
Finally.
Yeah.
How appropriate.
All right. Well, that's going to be a wonderful 50th video in this series. And my
absolutely.
Yeah, that's a good one.
My lord, 50.
Lordy, look who's 40.
I am
and then 10 more.
Going on.
Right. All right. So, everybody, join us next week for our discussion of Majungasaurus.
Or don't. We'd prefer that you do, though.
We'd prefer that you do. And also that if you like our videos, that you show us that by liking our videos and leaving a comment with what you liked about the videos. What do you want to see more of from us? Do you want us to get into more meandering, pointless academic discussions that center over differences in the definition of a single word?
About a topic
that we're not qualified to speak.
Right. Because if you like that, boy, we can keep doing that. If you want us to not do that and make more silly jokes, we can also probably do that. What I'm saying is leave a comment on the video. I'm too tired to be recording copy right now. Comment on the video, like the video, subscribe to the Skeleton Crew, and if you can, and if you really like what we do, please consider supporting us on Patreon. If you become a patron, you'll have access to a bunch of benefits, including access to our rapidly growing and wonderful patron-only Discord server. At certain tiers, the ability to send in questions for our monthly Q&A videos. And if you're a patron in any tier, your name will be in the credits that are rolling on the video right now. But of course, for some of our patrons, we also give you a verbal shout out at the end of the video. And those patrons, in some particular order, are Benjamin Seepser, nickname 3110, Philip Fico, AK92, Christopher Bellis Jones, Adamolos, Dan O'Kyrus, King Zashu, Max Ironpaw, original username, Pythonic, Swamp Ape Science, and Wheat. So thank you, all of you, very much for your support of the Skeleton Crew. We really couldn't do this without you guys. Everything you have done to support us over this last year. Now I can say over the years because it's been more than a year. It just means a whole lot. It has been a wonderful experience for all of us to grow this channel so rapidly, and we're looking forward to everything we can do in the new year as we keep bringing new Skeleton Crew videos to you and hopefully start to branch out in some new and exciting ways. Thank you guys so much for everything. We'll see you next week for our 50th anniversary, or our 50th video in this series. Not our anniversary video and not our 50th anniversary. And not our
50th video.
I need sleep. I need sleep. Good night. I'll talk to you about Majungasaurus soon.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.
The rest of us will too. Bye.